evening, Winnipeg. Good evening, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this evening on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good evening, universe, and welcome to a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. IC presents the 2021 NHL Draft. It's already been a tremendously hectic day in the NHL. Not so much for the Winnipeg Jets, but maybe that'll change in the course of the next few hours. I am your host, Drew Mindell. Dave Minuk in the top right, Ezra Ginsburg in the bottom middle. So nice to see so many of you joining us on this beautiful Friday night. So nice to see so many of you in the chat room, familiar faces and new faces both. Gentlemen, good to see you. It's been quite the day. Hopefully the chaos will continue in the first round of this NHL draft. We deserve it after what turned out to be a dud of an expansion draft day on Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. It seems like there have been 15 trades already today, and there's probably going to be some more. And that's what you like to see, right? Like, you want to have some first round excitement, right? Like, we all remember, back in 2013 when Gary famously said, "We have a trade to announce. I think you're going to want to hear this," right? Of course, talking about the Corey Schneider for the pick that turned out to be Bo Horvat. But, some of these trades, obviously you're kind of scratching your head, like, the Philadelphia Flyers acquiring Rasmus Ristolainen. I just thought they gave up too much. But you look at what Columbus got in return for Seth Jones, guys, and I know we're, going to focus on the NHL draft tonight, but, it looks like they're going to sign him to, around $9.5 million a year for 8 years, which, seems like, not only does it seem like a lot of money, it just seems like it's happening, real quickly. So, I mean, these are some pretty significant moves. And I think, when you consider Columbus has 3 first-round picks here, they already had 3 first-round picks, but now the picks are different because part of the Seth Jones trade was a swap of first-round picks. I mean, Columbus is, really improving the roster here. They just announced that they acquired Jake Bean for the second-round pick that they got from Chicago in the Seth Jones trade. So, Chicago's really improved their back end, and, Columbus has improved their team as well. Adam Boquist is a really good young prospect. He was going to factor in big time into the Blackhawks' future. So, not only are we seeing moves, Drew, we're seeing very significant moves and a lot of draft picks moving.
It has been a very busy day so far, as you referenced, Ezzy, and we'll get into all the trades. We'll get into all the moves from what has been a very busy day. We'll also bring you, of course, coverage of each and every draft pick as they take place. We're looking forward to being joined on tonight's program. Ken Wiebe, our good friend, is going to join us. Craig Button, TSN Director of Scouting, he's also going to join us to provide us with some instant analysis of all the moves that are being made. And we are planning and hoping to speak with the Jets first round pick, whomever that is, when he is available. So that'll be later on. Of course, the Jets picking, well, technically they are picking in the 18th slot, but that is really only going to be the 17th draft pick, given that Arizona had forfeited their pick and then acquired a new pick, and now Vancouver's not picking, and it's hard to keep track of everything that's been going on today, Mr. Minuk.
Yeah, there's no question. Although the overarching theme I took from today was Dougie Hamilton is going to get himself paid based on some of these contracts we're seeing for a guy like Seth Jones. So, Dougie Hamilton drafted a couple of years before Seth Jones, and he's going to, I think he was in the Minnesota as you were at that draft. And let me tell you.
Yeah, with Remo.
And he's going to make some money. There's no question about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was expecting it to maybe happen on the draft floor, but of course there is no draft floor. It's all virtual this year.
Virtual floor, yeah.
And I have to say, I said in the papers today or yesterday that this is really one of the most exciting weekends of the year. Really a lot of fun. Traditionally, we've gone to the draft for a number of years, and we always had a good time doing that. And it's always exciting, right? Everybody is excited. Every fan base is galvanized because you're getting an influx of young talent. Everybody is going to turn out to be the next Gretzky or Bobby Orr or whatever. But there's a lot of optimism. Nobody
grabs a bust.
No. It's funny. I was watching the NHL release comparables for the top 10 or 20 guys, and every guy is like, it was funny. And again, we don't watch the prospect. A lot of these guys, the way the real, like Cam Robinson out in Vancouver, that guy is like nuts for prospects. And so and I saw one of his tweets was like, yeah, he's big and Swedish, so suddenly he's Victor Hedman. He's saying some of the comparables don't necessarily fit. But like I said, it's probably the most fun time of year because, again, there's a lot of optimism surrounding teams. The Jets, as of right now, have 4 picks to make in the draft in the next 2 days. And it's interesting from a draft and develop perspective. Part of the problem when you're going for it a little bit is you've traded away draft picks, which we've seen the Jets do the last couple of years. So last year they only had 4. This year they've only got 4. We'll see what happens if they can acquire more, if they can make some moves. We'll see. But there's still some optimism because they've got some lower draft picks to make selections with.
Let's start with the Winnipeg Jets, because of course that's the focus, and that's what everyone that's joining us on this Friday evening is most interested in, is the Winnipeg Jets, and it's radio silence from the Jets' perspective. And I mean, it's not a surprise anymore when the Jets have radio silence, because more often than not, they sit out any of the big splashes. I mean, obviously the Line A for Dubois trade, the exception this year, but for the most part, when things are going crazy in and around the NHL, you can count on the Jets to not be as exciting as some of the other teams. I'm watching on my I guess that'll be my 4th screen here tonight. John Davidson being interviewed right now by, I think that's Emily Kaplan of ESPN. The Blue Jackets obviously very active. The Flyers going and out and trading away Gus Despair a couple days ago, and they get Rasmus Ristolainen earlier today, the guy that had been linked to the Jets, and they paid a fortune for him. And we'll talk about that trade as we go through the course of this evening. I guess my question for you gentlemen is, what are your thoughts on just the Jets standing pat so far? Not to say that they won't move up, not to say they won't move down. They have moved up in the first round once before. That, of course, was to acquire Logan Stanley back in the day. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, the lack of any buzz around the Jets as we sit here 7 minutes after 7 o'clock on day 1 of the NHL draft?
Yeah, I'm not that surprised, guys, and I don't think you guys are either. We didn't think the Jets were going to move their first round pick, first of all. But some of the players that have moved today, I mean, I don't think the Jets were seriously in on many of them. Like maybe the Jets had some, passive interest in Rasmus Ristolainen, but I don't think the Jets had, serious interest in a guy like Shane Gostisbehere, or certainly they weren't, in the market for Seth Jones. Like, unless, my math is incorrect, I don't think there is room for a $9.5 million AAV contract for Seth Jones, right? When you've got to pay Neil Pionk and you've got to pay Andrew Kopp, right? So I'm not that surprised in that sense, Drew, that because the players that moved, I didn't really think they were going to be in on them. Like a Jake Bean, maybe the Jets, kick some tires on Jake Bean. He's a guy that he just never really got the ice time. And obviously, former first round pick, a guy that's got some upside. So I like that move for Columbus. Like I got to say, I really like how aggressive Jarmo Kekalainen and John Davidson have been over the last week or so. And obviously, they dodged a little bit of a bullet. They didn't lose Max Domi because let's be honest, they aren't, they're not that deep at center. You've got, Jack Roslovic there, you've got Boone Jenner, but it's definitely, not the best team up the middle. So I'm not that surprised, but you got to think that, there is a move coming, right? We've talked about a guy like David Savard on the right side. I'll say it again. I do think, the Jets have a bigger need on the right side when you consider that you've got, Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg in the system. So, yeah, you would like maybe the Jets to get a little bit active in the trade market, and they still might make a move. But it's looking more and more likely that the Jets are going to address their needs on defense, through free agency.
Well, what's interesting to me, Dave, is that a lot of these defensemen in particular who've been talked about and who've been traded today, to Ezzy's point, are left side guys. And if you had to say which side do the Jets, have more prospects on and more up and comers who are almost ready to crack that lineup, it would undoubtedly be on the left side. I mean, that's where, they held on to Logan Stanley, they held on to Dylan DeMello. So, if you got DeMello and Pionk on the right side, your left side is right now Morrissey, assuming that this is the year that Heinola cracks the lineup. Logan Stanley is there. I have to believe that, as the Jets continue to look to upgrade this defense, they are probably more interested in a right side defenseman than a left side defenseman. And I think that is why, a second round pick for a guy like Jake Bean. I mean, Jake Bean is a guy who put up just last year, 2019-20, put up 48 points in 59 games at the AHL level. This is a guy, to your point, Ezzy, who's scratching at the ceiling, ready to break through, wasn't able to do it on the very deep Carolina blue line. So you wonder if the Jets are, if he'd been a right side defenseman, I bet you the Jets would have been willing to pay that price of a second round draft pick. The left side, I think they think that they're probably a little more stocked when it comes to ready to go defensemen on the left side, Dave.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Ezzy and I talked about this before the broadcast began, and I think it's a fact, right? I mean, this is the year. If you're not going to trust Ville Heinola to be your second pairing defenseman, then I don't know why Ville Heinola is on your team. Because if you don't think he's sufficient, I mean, we've had guys, good talent evaluators. Zinger was on with me doing that Moose end of season roundtable. What did he say about Heinola? He said he was the best player in the AHL. Now he may have meant the Canadian division, but still, regardless, he didn't qualify it. But it's
high praise regardless.
Yeah, and so the point is, you've got Morrissey, you got Heinola, you got Stanley. That's your left side. Okay, and you could have Beaulieu if you need to, because he's obviously signed for next year. On your right side, you've got Pionk, you've got, once you sign him obviously as an RFA, and you got DeMello, and you have a question mark. You don't have Pullman right now, he's a UFA. To me, and Ezzy and I talked about it, I don't think there's, and think about the connectivity. David Savard and Pierre-Luc Dubois are like best friends. So you bring in a guy who is going to make this guy you want to be a cornerstone of your franchise, your number one or number two center, whatever, depending on the way things play out for the next 5-6 years. Well, what's a good way for a guy who had a tough year last year to maybe make him a little bit more at ease? And again, I think Dubois is having a bounce back year. I think with the good training camp and a good summer, a good training camp, he'll be fine. I don't really have a lot of concern with his ability to play solid. But I think you go that extra mile when you're bringing in a guy who's going to make him a little bit more comfortable and can help your team. So again, Ezzy and I were talking about it. You can go Morrissey, Pionk, you go Heinola and Savard, and you can go Stanley and DeMello. That's fine. That's actually a pretty decent defense. And again, your defense isn't going to be, that's not going to be in the defense in game 1, and in game 82, it's going to be the exact same defense because you'll have injuries. So you're going to need to augment it in other ways. But I think David Savard brings that big physical element. He's lost a step. He's not as fast as he used to be. But the point is he'll eat pucks. He'll be a big, heavy presence in front of the net, something that the Jets need in addition to Logan Stanley. And especially when you got a puck mover like Ville Heinola, let him be the puck mover. You got Savard there on the other side, and it gives him that veteran presence he's going to be able to work with. So to me, if I'm the Jets, to your point and to what Ezzy just said, you're not even looking at these left shot guys. Because, again, if I'm the Jets, I would sign, if I get Savard, I'd get Pullman to be your 7. You have
to re-sign him, of course.
Well, yeah, that's like I said, you can sign him. You get Beaulieu to be your 8. Yeah. You leave Sandberg with the Moose, and if you have an injury, if you're on the road, whatever. But the point is, you can throw Sandberg up if you need to, give him that audition, and you really are setting your right side. I think in a better way, because it's not a huge splash. Because again, could the Jets go for Dougie Hamilton? They could go for him. Are they going to get him? Would he make them way better? Yeah, of course he would. But are they going to get him? I mean, we just saw what the numbers for Seth Jones, guys. What is the number for Dougie Hamilton looking like?
It's going to be very close. It's going to be somewhere certainly over 8 at a bargain price. So you know that it's going to be probably priced out of the Jets price range. And to be perfectly honest, Dougie Hamilton's probably got to be a little bit nervous about hitting the free agency market. With all these other moves that have taken place ahead of time, you wonder if he's going to get squeezed out a little bit. But that's a separate issue altogether. I will also mention that and I understand why you sort of neglected to mention him, because he's almost become a bit of an afterthought for the Winnipeg Jets. Sami Niku is still under contract here in Winnipeg for next season. So he could factor in somewhere there, but clearly the organization doesn't seem to have a lot of faith in him. Paul Maurice certainly doesn't seem to have a lot of faith in him. So, your comments about David Savard and the rest of how the defense would look are certainly apropos. The question I have for you, Ezzy, given what Dave just said about how David Savard, seems to be a reasonable fit for this Jets roster, would you go ahead and would you trade a late round draft pick to Tampa Bay to get a leg up in negotiating with him if he is the apple of the Jets' eye? Is that a move that you're willing to make? Give up a 6th or a 7th or conditional 6th or 7th, where you say, we're going to talk to him. If we get a deal done ahead of free agency, we'll give you that pick. Or do you just wait till next Wednesday and try your luck then?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because I mean, you obviously would wait if you know that there's a good chance that you're going to sign him, right? But yeah, I mean, if it's a late pick, and I don't think there's a good chance that Tampa Bay is going to sign him just because we know that they have to move other players just to get under the salary cap, right? Like Tyler Johnson, guys, I think we all expect to sign with the team. It might even be Seattle Kraken, right? So I don't see David Savard, going back to Tampa, and they got what they wanted out of Savard, and Savard got what he wanted. He got his Stanley Cup ring, right? Yeah. So, there's no hard feelings there. He was a rental. But yeah, I mean, if you want to give up, a later draft pick, then, to give yourself a better shot at signing him. But I'm on the David Savard train as well. Like he was on the third pair with Mikhail Sergachev. And, on most teams, that's a second pair. Easily, maybe even a first pair, right? Tampa Bay's defense was just so stacked. So I like Savard, but I'm with Dave. I think, when you're talking about, someone like Jake Bean, who, Carolina traded to Columbus for that second round pick, I think it was 44th overall. If you're bringing in Jake Bean, like what is that saying to a guy like Ville Heinola, right? Because I think we all expect, Logan Stanley to kind of pencil in as a third pair defenseman. As Dave mentioned, doesn't mean Stanley's going to be a third pairing defenseman for his entire life. I think he would probably, tell us he'd like to have a higher role and be in the top four or even a top pair defenseman. But yeah, you've got Ville Heinola there, guys, that has nothing left to prove at the AHL level. So I agree. Whether, Dave, it's the second pair, third pair, it doesn't matter. The fact is Stanley and Heinola, you got to be in your top six. Like Stanley, you protected over Dylan DeMello for a reason. You didn't protect him, to play another season with the Moose or to be your seventh defenseman. When he's healthy, he's in your top six. So I think, that's the big move coming. The other move I would keep an eye on is what we talked about on Wednesday during the expansion draft. Are the Jets going to bring in, a veteran center or winger on the fourth line, like a guy that, I've been talking to Dave about, texting him and talking to him about, is like a Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. Like somebody like that, like a veteran, has played, in the NHL for several years now, a little bit more offensively talented than a guy like Nate Thompson. I mean, I don't think the Jets are going to bring in a Casey Cizikas who's going to probably make around $4 million a year, but that's the only thing. Like, I don't think there's a ton of moves. I personally believe, there is a youth movement coming, and guys like Christian Vesalainen and David Gustafsson, Heinola, even like Dylan Samberg, I don't think he's going to play a full year in the NHL next year, but I wouldn't be surprised, if he gets some games, especially if there's some injuries. So yeah, for me, Drew, it's all about bringing in like a top four right shot defenseman. And then in terms of, the pairs and, is David Savard, better suited to be with Morrissey as opposed to like a Ville Heinola? I mean, that's obviously up to Maurice and the coaching staff to figure that out.
Well, the mumbo jumbo of the draft is done, and Gary Bettman on the screen. So the Buffalo Sabres are officially on the clock. It's only taken an extra pointless 20 minutes to come to that conclusion. Hopefully, it won't be a long time. Does anybody expect this to be anybody other than Owen Power, or we can just move on to the Kraken at number 2?
It's gonna be Owen Power, guys. Like, we saw, how well Cole Perfetti played at the World Championship, but what about Owen Power? Like, the World Hockey Championship is not a tournament for 18-year-olds. Like, it's a tournament for 25 to 30-year-olds, right? Like, we all know that. And no, Owen Power is going number 1 out of University of Michigan. The reports are that, he is going to play another year with the University of Michigan. I think the Buffalo Sabres will wait, but after one, you mentioned Craig Button's coming on the show a little bit later, probably in around an hour or so. He was saying, like, it kind of reminds him of 2018 when Rasmus Dahlin went first overall, and between, pick 2 and pick 10, they knew who was going to be picked. They just didn't know in what order, right? So I think the intrigue, Drew, is really going to come at number 2 when Seattle has that pick. And I think, a lot of people think it might be Matty Beniers, who's also from the University of Michigan, but that is where it really starts to, get really wide open.
They have a pretty good hockey program there, led by, of course, by Red Berenson, the legendary head coach at the University of Michigan. We'll bring you pick-by-pick coverage as soon as those selections come into us here. You are watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's our special edition 2021 NHL Draft coverage. Nice to see so many of you joining us on this Friday night. We remind you we'll be back at it tomorrow morning, Saturday, for extensive coverage of the additional rounds of the draft starting at 10 a.m. Central Time. That's when you can join us for day 2 coverage of the NHL Draft. I am your host, Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk in the top right, Ezra Ginsburg in the middle. So nice to see so many of you on this Friday evening joining us. And reminder, we are going to be giving away some Illegal Curve merchandise throughout the course of the show. Dave sporting the new IC shirt over there, as am I as well. So be sure to subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube
What
channel.
about me, Drew? I've got an IC shirt on.
I couldn't see. I can't see. Okay, there you go. Yeah, you're wearing your IC shirt as well there, big boy. So be sure to subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, and you will be eligible.
I'm going to wear this shirt every day, Drew. I'm going to wash it like once a week.
For the record, I did have
my new shirt.
So you're going to wash it more than you wash your other clothes, is what you're saying.
I did have someone message us on social media and say, how can I win a shirt? Because I showed I put Tracy's picture on Instagram and on our Twitter feed, and then I see move. That's funny.
That's funny, Joe. That's funny, buddy.
So the person said, how can I win? And I said, all you have to do is be a subscriber, participate in the chat, and you'll have a chance of winning. And he goes, I'd rather do anything but that, but I will climb a flagpole with a legal curve in my underwear with a legal curve written across my chest. I didn't take him up on that offer.
It's a very unique offer. It is unique. We haven't had that offer before. If somebody's willing to do that, then I think we can maybe hook them up with a shirt. We'll see on that front. Buffalo Sabres, as I mentioned, on the clock, 3.5 minutes to go. Anytime now, Buffalo.
Speaking of our IC merch, there's Tracy in the chat. So Tracy's already the first winner who got it personally delivered by yours truly this morning.
Well, that is Tracy wearing the shirt right now, though. That's what we need to know. We need Tracy. We need you to tell us if you're wearing the shirt.
Put that in the chat. We'll throw it up there on the screen. Alrighty, let's talk about the day that was. Where do you guys want to start in terms of the moves that were made earlier today? Buffalo?
Yeah, I think Buffalo probably.
Okay, so Buffalo, the big move that came out earlier, they trade away Rasmus Ristolainen. This happened.
Sorry, did you say Jack Eichel?
I didn't say Jack Eichel yet. The pick is in. So the pick is in from the Buffalo Sabres. We'll bring that to you momentarily as soon as it appears on my second screen here. But Buffalo trades away Rasmus Ristolainen to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for a first-round pick, a 2023 second-round pick, and defenseman Robert Hagg. Okay, from the Philly perspective, I understand it from the Buffalo perspective. It's a no-brainer from the Buffalo perspective. What is Philly thinking with this trade involving Ristolainen? Especially when you put it in the context of they traded away Gostisbehere earlier this week and a second-round pick to Arizona in exchange for literally nothing. So walk me through the thinking from Philadelphia's perspective as Owen Power just got selected by the Buffalo Sabres and the Seattle Kraken are now on the clock and the intrigue in the 2021 NHL Draft officially begins.
Tracy's wearing
right on, Tracy. Yeah, I mean, well, first off, Buffalo's been trying to trade Rasmus Ristolainen for 8 years now. So, I mean, I think, he's been a guy that, we thought was going to be traded probably back in 2019. The advanced stats are not favorable towards Rasmus Ristolainen. Now, have the Sabres been an awful team? No, they've been worse than awful. But it's snarky as he on this Friday night. I like it. No, but honestly, Drew, the Ryan Ellis trade for me was that was a sexy trade. That's a top pairing defenseman. Your top pair next year is going to be Ivan Provorov and Ryan Ellis, and that's going to be probably one of the best pairs in the entire league. No joke. We know how good Provorov is, and you've got Travis Sanheim there in your top four as well. But the thing that I don't get is, why did you give up so much for a player that the team wanted to move that contract out? And I think part of the thinking here for Kevin Adams and the Sabres is you already have Rasmus Dahlin, who's obviously your franchise defenseman right now, but Owen Power is clearly, we all knew, you just mentioned it, they just went up to the podium and took Owen Power out of Michigan. So you're going to build your defense around Power and Rasmus Dahlin. So Ristolainen's expendable. Robert Hagg is obviously, he can play in your top four. He's not a guy that's going to provide you a lot of offense, but he's relatively young. He's a decent defenseman. He's an NHL defenseman. I'll say that much, but he's not really going to have.
He was thrown in just impact. He was thrown in for the salary, for salary more than anything.
Right. And Shane Gostisbehere, same thing, right? Gostisbehere to Arizona, Gostisbehere was a regular healthy scratch on the Flyers. So Gostisbehere, even though he had that great rookie season, Gostisbehere is better suited to be a third pairing defenseman on most teams. And as you mentioned, that trade was clearly just creating, cap space there, right? Or just getting rid of him and Arizona not giving anything back. So yeah, the Ristolainen move doesn't make a lot of sense because, quite frankly, he's just a very average defenseman.
Dave, wouldn't you rather have Gostisbehere at $4.5 million than Ristolainen at $5.4 million? I mean, especially never mind the fact you also gave up a first-round pick and a second-round pick to get to that point. Like to Ezzy's point that everyone knew Buffalo wanted to trade Ristolainen. Sure, they may have been taking some calls, and I noticed that the water carriers were trying to do a good job in helping Philadelphia save face by saying, they had to add extra assets into the trade. But to me, it's just wild that Ristolainen would have this level of interest if he truly did, and that Philly would pay that price, because
that's just it, Drew. It's not that you just acquired Ristolainen, it's what you gave up. Like the first round pick to me makes absolutely no sense.
If you acquire him, Dave, for as a flyer, pardon the pun, for nothing, if you just as a salary dump you acquire him, then I understand that. But to give up actual assets for him, for a guy who's, and everyone says, well, get him away from Buffalo and his numbers are going to bounce back. Get him away from Buffalo and his metrics are going to look better. It's not the case. His numbers have been bad for year over year over year over year. At a point in time, this just might be what the player is.
That's a fair point, Drew. And it's a confusing move, and Buffalo made out very well from that trade. I mean, you got to give them credit. I just think everybody is dumping on Buffalo and what are they doing? But so far, Buffalo and Columbus are collecting some pretty good assets in terms and getting rid of players that they don't think that they were either weren't going to be part of their future or they didn't want to be part of their future. So you've got to give those franchises credit. And yeah, I'm a little confused about it, right? We see sometimes teams make moves to dump salary and you get that. But if you're going to dump a player, it's confusing. It really is a confusing move, especially I think I saw someone on Twitter call it like the GMing by Jekyll and Hyde. You make a great trade for Ellis, and everybody's like, wow, fantastic trade, great trade, really going to help your franchise. You were able to get something out of Nashville. Well done. But then you do this, and you're like, what are you seeing that everybody else is not seeing? Now, again, a lot of times you can discount what happens with players because the teams are so bad. Like Buffalo is so bad that you don't want to necessarily say, okay, that's what this player is, because maybe in a different system, but it's hard to see that happening. So like I said, Kenny's about to join us. Well, I'll cut out here and you can welcome Kenny in, but yeah, a very confusing move after a real nice one they did to get Ryan Ellis.
And we're pleased to welcome to the program our good friend, Kenny Weeb, joining us from the living room, and not a golf club. That in and of itself is a bit of a surprise. Want to update everyone on what's going on with the draft. Matty Beniers, as was expected. I can call him Matty. We're very close, by the way. He goes number 2 overall to the Seattle Kraken. So there's your answer to your trivia question. Anaheim Ducks are now on the clock. 3 minutes and 45 seconds to go before their selection needs to be in. Happy birthday, Ken. Nice to see you.
Great to see you guys as well. Close personal friend, Matty Beniers. Nice touch there, Drew, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Interesting start. I know you're giving people the business, taking a little longer than usual, but I think that maybe the broadcast partner wanted a little extra time after the TV show was not preempted, but there were a few preemptive strikes, I guess, for the Wednesday TV show.
It certainly was, exactly. So far, there haven't been Frank Saravelli hasn't ruined the first round of the draft, which is, I guess, generous of him at this point in time. Kenny, obviously, a lot going on in and of the NHL, and we'll talk about it from a Jets perspective as well. What are your thoughts on some of the moves that have been made today? We were just talking about it from the Philadelphia perspective.
Sure.
You trade away Gostisbehere, and you have to throw in a second-round pick to Arizona, and you get nothing back. Then you go out and you trade a first-round pick and a defenseman in Robert Hagg, and you get Rasmus Ristolainen, who is certainly not the apple of the eye of the analytics community. So just from your perspective, do you understand the sort of rationale of the Philadelphia Flyers so far this this offseason, this week, I guess?
Well, one thing we've learned, gentlemen, is that it's the cost of acquisition for a defenseman is high, sky high, if you will. I think if you're Dougie Hamilton and Dougie Hamilton's representation, you're feeling quite confident going into the 28th of July. I think you might even see some action on that on those rights of Dougie Hamilton, even though it seemed to have gone a little bit cold there. But in terms of Philadelphia specifically, love the Ryan Ellis edition. Ryan's a guy that I've been watching back to the 2010 Memorial Cup in Brandon when he was part of that Windsor Spitfires juggernaut that won the Memorial Cup. Funny side note, I don't mean to derail the show here, but I was covering that event, and when I introduced myself to Ryan Ellis in a one-on-one interview, he said, Weeb, is Shane your dad? The captain of the Brandon Wheat Kings was Shane Weeb that year. I looked at him a little bit funny. I politely said, "No, Ryan, I did not have a child when I was 14 or so. I don't have a 20-year-old son playing in the Memorial Cup this year." But that was my first interaction with Ryan Ellis. But as you guys know, in the Central Division, I've come to watch him quite a lot and enjoy his play for quite some time.
Have you talked about that since then?
I haven't brought that up since. I figured that was one to keep in the archives, but happy to share it with the Illegal Curve viewers and watchers and listeners. And man, first of all, sorry, I meant to get this out of the way early. Man, boys, nice work on the merch. Looking sharp. I know you're making people happy on the old Twitter machine with the draws so far. Looking very sharp.
We're going to have something for you, Kenny. Don't worry. We'll hook you up. We'll do a little trade. We'll trade you for some Kenny and Rennie merch, a hat and a shirt.
Yeah, I saw Rennie was modeling some stuff earlier today.
Yeah, indeed. He did have one T-shirt made. A few things maybe in the works, but we're a little slower on the rollout than you guys. You got that 10-year leg up on us, and it's showing when it comes to the merchandise. But in terms of Ristolainen, I know that Jets fans were not thrilled by the prospect of the Jets being linked to Rasmus Ristolainen. He has been linked to the Jets before. We know there was some more tire kicking happening at the NHL trade deadline this year. Nothing came to fruition. 6'4", 220, 230 pound guys with some mobility don't grow on trees. I know that his numbers have been poor for quite some time, certainly analytically, but players like that certainly still have value. A lot of value, as it turns out, if you're Chuck Fletcher. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out. What we do know is that Alain Vigneault will not be scared to play him. He could be a new partner for Travis Sanheim, the Manitoba product. Ryan Ellis is going to bolster that defense for sure. And what I do think here, guys, and I understand that some folks may not agree, but if you put Ristolainen in a situation where now he is on your second pairing and you play him with a mobile and stable partner like someone like Sanheim will be, if he's not playing with Ryan Ellis, and Ellis is probably going to be playing with Provorov, who is also going to benefit greatly from playing with Ryan Ellis, and probably works himself into the, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he could work himself into the Norris discussion with a partner like Ryan Ellis. That's a pretty good, now you're only asking him to be your third or fourth defenseman, so you don't need to play Ristolainen 25 minutes a game. Are there flaws in the game? Of course. Will those flaws be exposed as often when you're playing 22 minutes instead of 24 or higher? Now you have a chance to maybe put him in a little bit different situation to succeed, but ultimately we'll see. We know that the hot takes have been firing on all cylinders this week, whether that pertains to the Kraken expansion roster or the trades that have been made this week. I think obviously Seth Jones is another guy that, yes, we know this is another move that is impactful within the Central Division. Some folks don't like the term. Some folks don't like the dollar value. Some folks don't like the capital that was given up to acquire him. But if you're trying to add a defenseman that can play in your top pairing, the cost is high, and that is something that we know the Jets are looking. We know the Jets are in the market for at least one defenseman, a top four defenseman, and we know that if it doesn't, whether it comes in free agency or via trade, it's certainly going to cost you a great deal. And probably the best value proposition, at least in terms of the deals that were made today, is Columbus getting Jake Bean for a second-round draft pick. Obviously, the body of work is much smaller. He hasn't played a big role like these other guys, but if you're Jarmo Kekalainen and you've watched the majority of your star players walk out the door, the opportunity to get a guy like Jake Bean with some team control, I don't think he's ARB eligible this year yet, so the price tag will be reasonable. And now you're staying to a guy like Zach Werenski, who's watching one of his best friends leave to the Chicago Blackhawks. Hey, I understand this is not optimal, but this is a chance to add a defenseman who maybe can be there long term. And also too, we'll see what happens with Laine, but I do think that they're sounding like there could be some positive developments when it comes to maybe more than just signing a 1-year deal. Certainly, like I said, nothing confirmed, but I think that Laine, a lot of people thinking it's just going to be a qualifying offer of $7.5 million. There could be some more, potential longer range action on Patrik Laine. Whether it's with this contract or next, I'm not on the same side as my broadcast partner who thinks he could be traded this off season. I think there's still a chance for Laine to have a long-term relationship with the Columbus Blue Jackets. There's a coaching change, as we know, and great on Pascal Vincent getting that associate coach job. And speaking of Columbus, one other thing I want to get out with you guys. I mean, stick taps to Matt Calvert, the Brandon product and former Brandon Wheat Kings captain. Heartfelt statement in his retirement. This is a guy that had a chance to deal with him over the years, and one of the best human beings, not just in Manitoba, but just a quality individual who really carved out a great career for himself. And we wish him nothing but success in that next venture.
Absolutely, Kenny. Go ahead.
Sorry, Ezra, let me just update our audience. Mason Mctavish, a little bit off the board. Nobody necessarily had him going 3rd overall, but he just went 3rd overall to the Anaheim Ducks. A lot of people did not have him. They had him maybe late in that top 10, not necessarily that high, but the Anaheim Ducks go with centerman Mason Mctavish, 3rd overall. The New Jersey Devils are now on the clock with 3 minutes to go until their selection is due. I guess I'll before Ezzy jumps in there. Anything on Mason Mctavish that jumps to your mind there, Kenny?
Yeah, to me it sounded like he was one of those risers. Did a lot of research this week and talking also with Sam Cosentino, there of Sportsnet colleague. He liked McTavish a lot, and he was one of those guys that was on the rise. I think Grant McKegg was on with Hustler this week, and he thought that he could go as high as number 2. So that was the first time that I had heard that I knew he would be a riser, but maybe moving. That's a significant move from 9 or 10 to number 3 here. So interesting, right? I mean, big, strong guy, right? I mean, big, strong centerman. We know also the value of centerman super high. I mean, to me, this would remind me of when Dubois went 3rd overall in 2016, right? There was, he was a guy who was probably going to go, 5-6 somewhere in there, and all of a sudden he goes 3rd, and people gasp quickly, but 2-3 years in, all of a sudden you say, oh, that makes sense. And I think that I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but when we start looking at the Jets and where their vicinity is, I think that on defense, Carson Lambos is the kind of guy that we are going to be talking about in a couple of years in that similar vein. Similar to Thomas Chabot, like we're looking, how does that guy go in the 20s? And I'm not saying Lambos will go in the 20s, but I think that Lambos would be a real high value proposition. And we know there's a lot of teams and organizations in the Central Division who would probably have an interest in Carson Lambos. Looked at a lot of the mocks, whether it was St. Louis or Dallas or Nashville, or even to me, I think that Lambos is definitely in play for Winnipeg. That's just a gut feeling that I have. Obviously, we know this is a very high character individual with skill. Obviously, his injury and medical procedure on that lower body injury has impacted his ranking, if you will. But this is a guy who many people thought would be a top 10 pick as early or late as 2 years ago or a year ago. So I think that Lambos is right in the wheelhouse. I'm not sure he will be available to the Jets at that number, but to me, we're talking about Mason Mctavish now. I think that we're going to be talking about Carson Lambos in a very similar fashion. And we know the Winnipeg Ice are going to be a contender in the Western Hockey League this year. They've got a very strong core. And I think that Lambos is poised for a really big season in the Western Hockey League with a team that is looking to contend for the Western Hockey League championship.
I love that. You know that I love that Team Manitoba U16 alumni Carson Lambos, right, Kenny? So I love that you're getting that in there. That would be just awesome if the Jets. I feel like I sound like Chris Farley right now. That would be awesome if they got him. But it would be pretty special if they were able to get the hometown kid in the first round. But and obviously we want to get into who as we get closer to the 18th overall pick, which is really the 17th overall pick.
Easy for you to say, and not confusing for anyone following the draft at all.
I'm curious who this vacant guy is, but Kenny, I wanted to ask you about we were talking about the Rasmus Ristolainen trade, but the trade that has obviously implications for the Jets in the Central Division, Seth Jones. What did you think in terms of what Columbus got for Seth Jones? And are you surprised at the number that was thrown out there by Frank Saravalli? Because $9.5 million by 8. I guess that's going to mean that Dougie Hamilton's an $11 million a year defenseman.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Obviously, that's a big ticket for any player, but we know that Jones, it was very important for Jones to go to a place where he would consider signing long term. My old former colleague Sean Shapiro from The Athletic also saying that Dallas was another one of those teams in the mix where he would have gone and signed an extension. Obviously Popeye, I believe, played with the Mavericks for some time as well, so Dallas is a place that's obviously very important to them. Let's look. He was a partner of Jacob Trouba. Both those guys now are once this extension is official on July 28th, both guys ended up getting very large ticket deals, and can't be that surprised. And I understand that it was a tough year last year for Seth Jones, and lots of people have lots of opinions on whether he peaked or not, or if he plays too much or whatever it is. But Chicago is trying to expedite this, rebuild it into a reload, and they were able to do so without moving Kirby Dach, which I think is an absolutely home run, grand slam, whichever terminology you want to use. That's a big deal for them. Of course, there is some risk involved with this. Of course, long-term deal, big number for a team that has two pretty big tickets already on the roster. And speaking of good news, how about Jonathan Taves having those positive developments on the health front? And I think that's obviously a great development for him. It'll be super interesting. There we go. Luke Hughes going number 4.
Dynamic duo.
A family affair for the Devils. Exciting times for them and the Hughes family for sure.
I don't think they're going to get Quinn though, Kenny.
Not this year. No, not this year. Speaking of guys, there too. I know there's a lot of hot takes about Oliver Ekman-Larsson dip and play, but this just goes to reinforce how tough it is to find a top pairing defenseman. Yes, some people will argue that Ekman-Larsson was not playing at a top pairing level anymore, but again, I think he's going to really do I think that he will also really benefit under the Travis Green system with the Vancouver Canucks. I think he's going to be a great fit there. And, he could be a new partner for Mr. Hughes, who had a tough year at times, I thought. Yes, he did put up his points, but he was not playing at the level that he played at in the bubble playoffs, that's for sure. We know there is pressure in those markets, and it's super interesting, right? A lot of people that are criticizing all the moves that are being made, whether it's by Jim Benning or Chuck Fletcher, a lot of those same people are saying those are the same people that want GMs to take these wild swings, and then when the wild swings happen, how could you be doing this, right? This is the beauty of the Twitter machine and the beauty of the hockey world, right? We know that it's hard to make deals, right? It's hard to make deals in a flat cap world. It's easy to criticize those deals, and it just as easy as it is to say, why aren't these teams doing more? So I always think that it's important you can have an opinion, no doubt about that, but you can't say with certainty how this is going to work out. They don't know that. You don't know that. I don't know that. The GMs who make the deals, they have a good idea of what they hope it looks like, but nobody really knows for sure. And that's not to say the criticism is not valid. There is certainly reasons for criticizing on a number of levels, but let's see how these things work out. And I mean, the bigger development is adding the winger. Connor Garland is a guy who was in high demand, folks. Yeah. And make no mistake, if you're a team in the NHL who thinks you wanted to add some scoring, Connor Garland was on your list of players you were trying to acquire. So you can say whatever you want about the contract and the fact that it was only 12% in the retention barrel, but Connor Garland is going to be a prototypical 20-plus goal scorer, whether he's playing on the second line with Bo Horvat or if he is a new winger for Elias Pettersson. This is a player who is probably going to produce at an even higher rate if you put him with a playmaker like Elias Pettersson. So, rip the deal all you want, but don't ignore they got the best player in the deal. So Don't ignore that fact either. And are there some salary cap challenges? Is Jim Benning going to still have to potentially move a Nate Schmidt? Maybe. We know his name has been in there before, and let's get it out of the way right away. Nate Schmidt, maybe he's a guy the Jets would like to target, but we know from past experience when Vegas was looking to move him that Winnipeg was on that 10-team no-trade clause. So unless there's been a change, and I'm not familiar with one having been made, I don't think that is an option that's going to be happening for the Winnipeg Jets. Could that change with one phone call? Sure, but my understanding, at least at this time, is that if Schmidt is moved, it will be to an American team. We know he's from Minnesota. We know that Nate is one of the most gregarious players in the National Hockey League, and he spoke openly to my colleague Ian McIntyre about how tough it was in the COVID situation and the pandemic restrictions that were happening in Canada last year. So I think it would be a tougher, a chance of convincing him to move to a team like Winnipeg. Do I think he'd look good at times on a pairing? Here's a guy that can play both sides, left side, right side. He's actually feels more comfortable on the right side. Would he be a good partner for Josh Morrissey potentially? Of course. But I don't think that that is a front burner issue unless something changes on the no move clause as it pertains to Nate Schmidt. But big thing for me, Garland being a big addition for the Vancouver Canucks, and I think that Ekman Larsson will get back to playing a better style of hockey. I mean, yeah, I understand it's not how it works, and it's not how it works all the time. But players can. They can really be rejuvenated. And again, some people won't like the example, but this is reminiscent to me of Tyler Myers when he left the Buffalo Sabres and came to a team where you went from losing all the time to being in a playoff race. Well, the other thing that we've talked about too, beyond Vegas and probably Edmonton, who's doing some interesting things on their own, that third spot on the Pacific is wide open. So if you're a team that was the Canadian team that went deepest in the August-September bubble, and you see that there's only two teams that are kind of separating themselves in the Pacific Division, of course you're going to try to go for it. I mean, especially in Jim Benning's situation, right? I mean, if he is really on the hot seat, you got to take a couple of swings.
He swung. He certainly did. Ken Wiebe, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, our special 2021 first-round draft coverage. Kenny, of course, from his great work with our friends at Sportsnet. The Columbus Blue Jackets have just selected, it appears to be Kent Johnson, the centerman. Another name going a little bit higher maybe than a lot of people thought. He goes to Columbus to fill certainly the unnecessary need that they had. Not a lot of depth up the middle with them, also out of the University of Michigan. So how about that? If you're a Wolverines fan, 3 of the top 5 picks in this draft go to the University of Michigan, with Kent Johnson being number 5 to the Columbus Blue Jackets, Dave.
Yeah, and Kenny, I'm just to piggyback a little bit on the back part of your answer. I'm with you 100%. There's too many people who are quick to judge these deals before you even give them a chance to come to fruition and to really have a chance to evaluate them. Because sometimes they take years. You can't look at this stuff and say, oh, well, I immediately know who the winner is and I immediately know who the loser is, because you don't. You just can't know, because nobody has a way to forecast the future. You have to allow this stuff to play itself out. There's been too many instances. Like I said, how many people on the Patrick Laine and Pierre-Luc Dubois deal were instantly like, oh, Team X won or Team Y won. But the reality is you don't know until you've seen 3, 4, 5 years down the road, not immediately after. I get that it's a hot take society we live in, but it's just not realistic in terms of talent evaluation, in terms of trade evaluation.
Yeah, and Kent Johnson's a guy that Scott Wheeler from The Athletic had as high as number 2. So obviously we know it's an incredibly high skill set there for sure. And I hate to do this, Drew, but it's Mel Pearson now running the exquisite University of Michigan program. Red had retired a couple of years ago there. So right. And great connections. I think Mel has some Manitoba roots as well. Speaking of the Manitoba roots, I think there's some Flin Flon connections up there with Mel Pearson.
Love it, Kenny.
Now you made Ezzy's day.
There you go. Hey, we're here to help. We're here to help, and we're here to spread the joy level around.
Well, Kenny,
when I said Red Berenson, I thought, I'm sure he's retired, but
it's funny.
I didn't have an opportunity. Yeah,
you said it. I was like, I'm pretty sure he was retired, but I didn't want to. You were on a roll, so I didn't want to cut your legs out.
Yeah, my apologies, Drew. I know the guys were being too polite there. The guys are going to be. I just wanted to bring it up as a Manitoba. Hey, I wanted to bring it up as a Manitoba connection.
Look, I like that you're comfortable enough that you can give me the gears when Dave and Ezzy are being nice to me, because that's rare that they're nice to me, and I was a little uncomfortable with it. So I like that you're comfortable enough to hop in here and fill that role.
And you know our relationship. Usually those are sent quietly and politely by DM, and I meant to send it to you privately as well, but I just saw this great opportunity.
Burn me on the screen.
No, that's not what I meant. It was just an opportunity to bring up the Manitoba connection. That's all. Not to bring up the air. Not to bring up the air. You know that's not my style.
Hey, maybe this means that Drew's going to bump Kevin
I'm just going to go back over there and cry for a little bit if anyone needs me.
Kenny, so getting back to let's get some draft talk here. You wrote a great article in for Sportsnet talking about what you think the Jets might do, talking about Carson Lambos, and you've already done a little bit here. And now, do you think though, from a Jets perspective, when you have Heinola, you have Stanley, you have Samberg, you have Chisholm, so you've got a lot of left side guys. If you're the Jets and you have but of course he's a Winnipeg boy, so that makes it a little bit easier. What do you see the Jets doing? I mean, regardless of whether it's Lambos, or how do you really see the Jets thinking? Are they going best player available, or do you think that they're going to more likely go for a need to fill an organizational need?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's hard to get a straight answer, right? I mean, and no one's going to show their hand leading up to the draft. The other thing to remember, and you guys know this better than anybody, the needs today are not always the same as the needs 2 to 3 years from now, when those players will be probably working themselves into the mix. So if the Jets board is equal at Lambos and Corson Kuhlman's, do you lean towards organizational need, which would be on the right side? They're different players. They have different skill sets. Corson is a little bit more of a raw talent, where I would say that Lambos is a little bit more refined. It's super interesting. I mean, I don't have a great answer. I mean, generally the Jets have gone by best player available, but in the last 2 drafts, they've only had 4 picks. So, I mean, now you're having a little bit of a different discussion, I think, to a certain degree, but it depends on what the tier level is and what the drop-off is. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff kind of hinted that, right around the number that they're going to be picking, 17/18, he feels you're able to get an impact player there. I mean, they got Kyle Connor at 17 before, so before people say you have to be in the top 10 to get an impact player, pump the brakes a little bit on that one.
He played for Red Berenson, though. I got that one right.
Indeed. Bang on that one.
Yeah.
I do have to, another little bit of a detour side street here for you guys. To me, this is a cool story. I mean, I played with Corson's dad with the Winkler Flyers. His dad is Colin Kuhlman's. He played junior there, and I actually lived with Colin and his mother in Regina at the University of Regina during my first year when I played with the Cougars. So I don't know Corson at all. I've never watched him play, but I not live anyway. We know he had a great appearance at the Under-18 championship. I know he comes from great stock, and the family, I texted with Colin earlier today. No inside intel there. We know the Jets wouldn't tell their player 4 hours in advance, but it's an exciting day for the Kuhlman's family. So, I mean, it's kind of a cool thing. You have a local guy in Lambos, but I mean, it's always a great reminder of how long ago it is that I played in Winkler, my last year being 1995, 96. So super interesting on that part. Sorry for the side story, but it's kind of one of those reminders when you remember that you're into your 40s when a guy that you played with has a son not only being drafted but being drafted in the first round of the NHL draft. So kind of a cool moment there. You guys also know there are a ton of interesting forwards around that range also, and and how those forwards will be impacted by Sebastian Cossa from the Edmonton Oil Kings and Jesper Wallstedt, the Swedish goaltender. So we're not quite there yet, but as early as maybe 7 or 8, I mean, LA is maybe one of the first teams, then you have Ottawa, then you also have Chicago. There's a lot of teams in that range who will be looking potentially at a goaltender. So, and that will disrupt things, whether it's with the Matthew Coronato or, I don't see yes, I understand that there were some suggestions maybe Cole Sillinger could dip. To me, I don't see that happening. I think that he's too much of a,
he could
goal
be a top 10
scorer.
pick, Kenny.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's more likely that Sillinger will be in the top 10 than he will be available at that number. But then it pushes some other guys around. I mean, another guy that I mentioned in the story that Dave referenced from talking to a lot of people, Isaac Rosen is a guy who could be in that range, but he's not a big man. I mean, he's 156 pounds. So, but he's also been compared, maybe he has a lot of those Ehlers-like qualities. So, and same with Fabian Lysell. Lysell, yes. So, I mean, here's another guy who, there are some questions of maturity. I love this pick by the Detroit Red Wings, Simon Edvinsson. He's another guy that is getting a lot of comparisons to a Victor Hedman type. Not at all surprised Steve Yzerman is going in that direction. But man, there's a couple really super interesting players around there. You have Bolduc if you're looking at a center. I mean, there are a lot of, talented individuals, but, who's going to drop and who's going to fall? What we know for sure is that nobody expected Cole Perfetti. And again, we know this is the classic line. I can't believe that player fell to our team. That will be the over-under on that about right now from NHL GMs. Let's set the over-under at about 20.5. Yeah. So likely 20.5 out of 32. I'll take the over on that. And Hustler would love that, right? Cool Bets probably has the line up and ready to go. But it is super interesting, right? I mean, especially when you have two goalies that are going to be, potentially top 15 picks. And that's the one thing when we referenced earlier, 4 picks for the Jets. I don't think that Cossa would slip into that mold of a guy that they would maybe look at 17/18. But as someone else told me this week, maybe the best time to draft the potential successor is when you have a Vezina candidate and winner like Connor Hellebuyck. I don't anticipate that happening, but again, not knowing the list and in a year where there is so much uncertainty, I certainly would not rule it out. I don't expect it to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked by it, and I don't think that anybody else should be either. But I expect it's most likely to be defenseman Dave, but I could also see, we know that the place that needs the most replenishing in the pool is at skilled forward, especially with the news that Nathan Smith will head back for his junior season at the University of Michigan or Minnesota/Mankato.
Well, that's why
I would call that, Kenny, I'd call that breaking news because you made my eyes go, whoa, I didn't even know that. So I'm gonna have to look into that.
Well, sorry, it came from the same story that you read when you gave me the shout out about Arvid Holm.
I missed that part. Holy moly.
It was a couple graphs earlier in that same story. I said most likely in the story, but have been able to confirm that since that time.
Reading comprehension has never been Dave's strong suit.
No. But but Kenny, just to quickly piggyback on the Arvid Holm thing. So is he? What more can you tell people who maybe didn't read the article? But you had said in the article that you expect Arvid Holm to be in North America. I'm assuming that would be with
so Moose or Jets. Yeah, I expect him to be with the Moose. I mean, I expect the tandem to be, Mikhail Burden and Arvid Holm. But is it possible, depending on what happens in the next week to 10 days, that Mikhail Burden could work himself into the backup? At least he's going to be in the discussion. He's going to be in the competition. But if the Jets do not bring Laurent Brossoit back, and I'm not saying that they won't, I think there would be genuine interest there. But, in making some calls today, I mean, we're all watching the story unfold. I mean, if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, how do you not make a call to Laurent Brossoit and Ray Petkow and the folks who represent him? I mean, his underlying numbers are fantastic. And, if we know that they have a certain cap on the value they placed on a goaltender, if I'm Carolina, I am calling I'm calling to inquire about Laurent Brossoit potentially being, even if you see him in that 1B scenario. What we know about Brossoit, he loves it in Winnipeg. He loves the situation with Connor Hellebuck. There's a solid friendship there. They work out together. They train together. They have the same representation. What we also know, and Laurent Brossoit has not been shy about this before, he'd like to play some more games. And what we also know here is that there's not a great opportunity to play a large number of games. This is not a job share situation, nor should it be. So if you're looking to play more than 22 to 25 starts, it's not going to be possible with the Winnipeg Jets, at least not at this time. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out. And I mean, this whole game of musical chairs for goaltenders, guys, I mean, it is a fascinating, fascinating game. I mean, it's fascinating to watch who's going to end up where and who's going to be left on the sidelines looking for work. I think that that's a legitimate concern for some goalies. We expect there to be potential buyouts for, whether it's Mikko Koskinen or maybe Martin Jones. I mean, but you also, if you're Laurent Brossoit and you're banking on yourself in a short-term deal before you can go out and grab a number one job, I mean, tell me where there's a better scenario for you to do that if you look at the defense core and the way the Carolina Hurricanes play. We know that the underlying numbers for Brossoit have been fantastic. So to me, that's a spot that I think could be a landing spot for Brossoit if he's not back with the Jets. And I think the Jets would love to have Brossoit back. He makes a great tandem with Connor Hellebuck. But what we know is that the situation for Brossoit is different than it was a year prior when he had the tough year. I mean, he had a great year, then a tough year, then a very solid year, but he didn't get a lot of reps and a lot of work. I think, what was it, 11 starts in 14 games? I mean, it's not a big body of work, but like I said, a team like Carolina that values kind of analytics, we know a lot of teams, value analytics, as they should, but his underlying numbers are fantastic. His adjusted save percentage is one of the best in the National Hockey League. So he's a guy that I think could not shuffle the market or cause a seismic shift, but I think there's going to be significant interest in Laurent Brossoit when free agency opens. And that's the other thing. Without the interview period, it's tough to get a gauge on where guys could potentially be going. And I think that sort of leads to a little bit more of the urgency for the Winnipeg Jets, unless they feel Mikhail Burden is ready. I mean, Dave, you watched, I saw a couple Moose games, but you've seen him more than I have. I mean, are you ready to say that Burden is ready for a backup job, or might he be better suited for one more year of carrying the mail? But I mean, if Holm is coming over, both those guys are going to need to play. So I think this is going to be very interesting, especially that we know it's not going to, the Jets won't be able to offer a big raise to Laurent Brossoit because of some of the other areas where they're going to need to add bodies and salary after they get their RFAs signed. So speaking of topics we need to dive into.
Nice segue there, Mr. Weeb. You can host this show when I'm no longer available. To your point, diving into the topics, that leads us straight to Andrew Kopp, because I don't think anyone expects Neil Pionk to be for it to be contentious. Let's say Andrew Kopp is the big question mark when it comes to RFAs. I'll get to my question in a second. William Eklund, a left winger, he goes to the San Jose Sharks, 7th overall, Swedish player. Right around, most people thought that he would be in and around this range. So a very logical pick, I would suggest, with
E5.
the San Jose Sharks. What's that, Dave?
E5.
E5?
I don't remember Eklund.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes, fine. Thank you.
Kenny knew what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt me. I got a one-track mind. I can't multitask that much.
Hey, we also know that the offensive core, it's been a tough day for Drew. We got COVID stories coming out of Vikings land. What's going on? Rick Dennison, come on, get the vaccine. Let's go. This is not difficult.
That's right. Get the vaccine. Be an O-line coach. I don't want the assistant O-line coach to have to piece together what is always a trouble spot for the Minnesota Vikings. Kenny and I are aligned on that front when it comes to our Vikings fandom. But it was reassuring, though, Ken, you have to admit, to see that the Packers are even imploding even more with Darvin Adams not willing to re-sign there right now and contract talks breaking off. But we can do that on our on the Illegal Procedure football show, which we'll get started coming up in a little while here. In any event, Andrew Kopp, how do you see that shaking out? That is the big sort of question mark to this Jets offseason as it pertains to the RFAs.
Yeah, the only thing we know for sure is that both sides are interested in a longer term relationship. At the where they're at with the numbers, that is very difficult to ascertain at this time. We know that Kevin Cheveldayoff would only go so far as to saying there have been preliminary talks. What we would know also is that where are the goalposts at? This is how I see this scenario right now. I think that Kurt Overhart and Andrew Kopp are probably hoping for somewhere in the $5 million range. And I think the Jets, probably their initial offer would be somewhere between Adam Lowry and Alex Iafallo. I think the Jets would hope for it to be closer to 4 than it would be to 5. This week's developments, whether it were in the last 2 weeks, whether it is with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins or more recently Zach Hyman, where the number is going to be around $5 million. What does that do for the value of Andrew Kopp? That's up to your opinion. But what we do think that it probably means they're probably somewhere in the middle. To me, will the Jets have to pay a premium to get Andrew Kopp after how things have gone previously? Perhaps. There may be, the opposite of a Winnipeg discount. You might have to pay a Winnipeg premium. But what we don't know is what is the breaking point, right? We know Andrew Kopp is deserved a raise. He had a great year. We know he's valued. We know he knows his value with Winnipeg, and we know that he's a guy who can play in the top 6. He's a great versatile player. He's on the power play. He is one of the most important penalty killers on this team. He is part of the leadership core. So I think he wants to be part of that. What I don't know is what the number or the number where you say this is not happening for me, where you file for player elected arbitration, and if that happens, that's when you see the pressure points. I know some people thought that because he was on the protected list that there were maybe some potential for there being positivity in the negotiations, and there very well could be. But to me, Saturday was an artificial deadline. The real deadline is when we get closer to free agency and when, whatever the arbitration date, if it gets that far, is happening. So there's still time to get this deal done. I think we know there is mutual interest, and we know that both sides are willing and would like to find a deal as long as it's at the right number. And I'm fascinated to see how this turns out, because we talk about all the issues the Jets have. I mean, Andrew Kopp is an incredible safety valve in addition to being a very effective player. So we know that Pierre-Luc Dubois will be looking for a bounce-back season. What we also know is that Andrew Kopp can play comfortably on the third line, on the second line, or even on occasion as the safety valve for Mark Scheifele. So in a year where the Jets are probably going to be looking to get Nikolai Ehlers some more premium minutes, maybe one of the ways to offset some of that is by having Andrew Kopp on that wing. Could Kyle Connor be there? Of course. But if you're looking for the defensive conscience with Mark Scheifele, you have a guy in Andrew Kopp that can play there. And, yes, some people will argue, well, Andrew Kopp isn't an elite finisher. Well, okay, well, that's fine. But, who wasn't an elite finisher? Pascal Dupuis or Chris Kunitz. But both of those players were quite effective when playing with Sidney Crosby. And I'm not calling Mark Scheifele Sidney Crosby, but he's their most offensive player. So you don't always have to have the most, elite finisher there. And if you have Kopp there, who had a great year in 15 goals, well, Mark Scheifele might shoot a little bit more, and he might put Andrew Kopp in a position where he has some additional looks where he can up those totals on the offensive side. So to me, Andrew Kopp is an incredible third-line player, but he's more than that. He can play in your top 6 comfortably, but now it's up to him to keep forcing himself and earning more. That's the beauty about Andrew Kopp. Never satisfied, always looking for more. But in this situation, the Jets are going to need to agree on a deal with him first, and then we're going to see what happens. Because to me, Andrew Kopp is a great example of what a player should want to do and how he should act. Andrew Kopp, after the bubble, Andrew Kopp made it quite clear in a declaration he would like to be the number 2 center with the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets in the same year went out and got Paul Stastny to be the number 2 center, and then went out and got Pierre-Luc Dubois to be the number 2 center. But Andrew Kopp did not hang his lip or complain. He went out and produced his best season as a National Hockey League player and spent a nice chunk of time playing in the top 6 and being a key contributor to the quote-unquote second power play unit, where he was I think, the second highest goal scorer on that unit behind Nikolai Ehlers. So he's a great story. I mean, this is a guy who has always pushed for more and got more. Back to the time where Red Berenson made him earn a job on that Michigan Wolverines team as a walk-on when he had an opportunity to play NCAA hockey elsewhere on a scholarship. So you went from walk-on as a freshman to captain as a junior player. I don't think for one second that we've seen the ceiling of Andrew Kopp, and I think that the Jets want him to reach that ceiling as a member of their organization because of all that they've invested in him and all that he has given back to them. So now it's just a matter of getting that wrapped up.
Kenny, the Kings have just taken Brant Clark, 8th overall. I'm not sure if you saw that there, but for everybody who's watching, we're at pick 9 right now. So we have still a little bit of time before the Jets pick at 18, but really 17. But I just wanted to get back to, the Jets and away from the NHL draft here. I mean, it's amazing that it's taken us this long, to talk about, defensemen and who the Jets might be targeting. But, right before you hopped on, we were talking about David Savard, and I think you'd agree there's a good chance that, Chevy's looking for that right shot defenseman. In your opinion, is he the number one target right now? Like, who else do you think the Jets might be targeting on that right side? Or are we wrong? And, could the Jets still be looking to bring in a veteran left shot defenseman to play on the left side in your top 4, possibly, paired up with Neil Pionk?
Yeah, it's super interesting. We know a lot of the right shot potential targets, dating back to Adam Larson on Wednesday, and we know that Jamie Alexiak's another guy who is, the guy that the Jets have had interest in, both at the trade deadline, and they would have had him on their targets list for free agency. A lot of guys going off the board and moving teams, and I mean, knowing my homework assignment was to be on with you guys, I went through all 30 lists today. So what I have come up with, yes, certainly David Savard. I think that Jake McCabe, to me, is a super interesting candidate. I think his injuries may keep him out early in the year, so it's not an immediate, source of, satisfaction or potential for the Jets. But I think Jake McCabe is a guy who would be on the list. You'd probably get him at a pretty decent value. One of the names I've seen today, Marcus Pettersson there from Pittsburgh. Cap hit around $4 million. It's high for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's not a big offensive producer.
4 more years. He's got 4 more years under it. I mean, he's a fixed cost. So there's
that's true.
He's 25, a good defenseman, though, Kenny. He's a good defenseman.
And it would align with the window, right? The window of the the Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Connor Hellebuyck window. We know there are some members of the core that are extended beyond that point. He doesn't really play a stiff game from what I understand, but I mean, he's mobile and he's a pass first puck mover. So what's the cost of acquisition? I mean, with things flying around today, I mean, who knows what the cost would be, but he's an interesting one for me. But McCabe, I think, would be a high target. I do think Savard is a target, but my colleague Elliot Friedman believes that Montreal would be the front runner on David Savard right now, especially with what's happening with Shea Weber. That would not be a surprise. To me, the perfect fit, I have it figured out, no problem, but he's not available. I think that Chris Tanev would be a wonderful fit for the Jets. You talk about fixed cost, you talk about a reasonable number, I believe just at $4.1 million for 3 more years. And it doesn't matter.
I thought you were going to say Dustin Byfuglien.
Well, I left that one to the guy who mentioned him yesterday. So, yes, Dustin Byfuglien would solve a lot of problems, but let's not be starting faulty rumors
he's
right there
points.
About a potential comeback there. But I think Chris. No, I know you were just kidding, but I think Chris Tanev would be perfect. But I also don't think for one second that the Calgary Flames are rebuilding. So if the Calgary Flames were choosing to rebuild or reload after this change, I think Chris Tanev would be perfect. He's right in that. I mean, yes, 31, I believe. So would there be some risk? Of course. But Chris Tanev is the template that you're looking for. You're looking to find the next Chris Tanev, right? Yep. So you're looking to find the guy that's the 26, 27-year-old version. So far, despite looking at all those rosters, I have not found the 26-year-old version of Chris Tanev who is either under contract or a guy that you can sign long-term. He's out there, but all NHL teams are looking for him, and I certainly will continue to look, but I haven't found him yet. Another interesting name to me, Brennan Dillon is a guy that the Jets had on their radar the same year that they acquired Dylan DeMello. So I did a little bit of research on that, but in talking with Stephen Wino, our good friend from the Associated Press in Washington, who had quite a few live viewings of Brennan Dillon this year. His play was not at the same level as it was as a member of the San Jose Sharks, and I don't think that's any secret. But how much that had to do with fit, how much that had to do with COVID, how much that had to do with a guy that had been in a very comfortable situation in San Jose, and it just wasn't as easy to make that transition. So I think there might be a chance, but again, that's $3.9 million for, I believe, another 3 more years. Washington's probably looking to move a little bit of money out that could adjust the price tag, but I'm with you guys. I mean, unless you're moving Josh Morrissey over to the right side or asking Ville Heinola to move to the right side, I don't think that would be a front burner issue. But I mean, based on how many people have already been moved off of the wish list, don't rule anything out at this point. It's still a long summer for guys to get comfortable in their summer skates and whatever else. But those are a few of the guys that I have written down here. And we know that Gavrikov out of Columbus was a guy that the Jets also looked at the deadline. I don't know where. I mean, he has 2 more years left. I don't know exactly where he stands in the puzzle with the Columbus Blue Jackets in terms of their rebuild. But to me, that's my list for now. I will continue to try to, the next time I come on with you guys, I may have a different list, but I hope that gets.
Well, that was great. I feel it was like Chris Jericho there, Weeb. Chris Jericho's list. It's really Ken Weeb's list.
Well, I know Drew had to do a little bit of homeschooling, so I hope that I passed my homework assignment.
I'll tell you what, you did, and it was a really easy grader, so you get an A+, no question about that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I was just hoping for a pass. Pass fail. I was just hoping for a pass.
After that soliloquy,
nobody fails. No one fails.
You've earned at least an hour of Paw Patrol watching. So you get that for that great research there, Kenny. I'll grant you that.
There we go. Dylan Gunther for the Arizona Coyotes. Sorry, I don't want to be back to hosting the show here, but I just want to show you that I'm paying attention here.
We got it on the screen as well. So we're multitasking on this Friday night.
He's a really good player.
Nice pickup, yeah, and a guy that good finisher. So I think it'll be super interesting to see. I mean, he's going to go back to the super interesting thing overall. I mean, are any of these guys even going to be in the NHL this year? Especially if Owen Power is going back to the University of Michigan, right? I mean, every year there's usually somebody who is a surprise, but I don't know that it's necessarily set up to have a lot of guys jumping straight into the NHL this year, especially with all the potential lost development time.
Exactly.
Well, Kenny, that is perfect.
Another good segue, Dave. That's right in your wheelhouse. I'm here for you.
Right into my wheelhouse about development and where players are going to play. Because when we talked to Craig Button on Legal Curve Hockey about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, I asked him. I said, Craig, with a guy like Cole Perfetti, AHL not an option. Of course, remember this was a while ago. What do you think is better for his development? A shot with the Jets or going back to the OHL? Craig, who loves development like me, would let prospects, earn their chance to, let them develop properly. He said he thinks Cole Perfetti would be better off in the NHL because of what he was able to do in the AHL and at the World Championship and whatnot. So now we hear what Darren Dreger reported a couple days ago, that idea that there's going to be an exemption for players who have played over a certain number of games in the AHL last year. So that would impact a guy like Cole Perfetti, Quentin Byfield in the Kings organization. I believe he played 32 games in the AHL. So it's not just a Jets point of view, but of course people here in Winnipeg are more focused on what's happening with Jets prospects. And I know you asked Kevin Cheveldayoff about it yesterday and his availability, but just how big is that going to be for a guy? And again, don't get me wrong, we know that Perfetti wants to play for the Jets and wants to earn a shot with the Winnipeg Jets, but how much better is that going to be able to say, listen, you're going to start with the Manitoba Moose next year and continue what you were able to do this past season?
Yeah, it's a massive development here for, not only the Winnipeg Jets, but, all the other teams that have those players in that scenario, especially for Cole Perfetti, who showed quite capably that he can handle the minutes in the American Hockey League despite the, the size deficiency and whatever else. But Dave, you obviously watched him more than I did, but I was able to see Cole 2 or 3 times last year, and just an impressive job of what he was able to do from start of the year where he was, generating almost the majority of, well, not almost, he was generating the majority of his points on the power play because of his smarts and his spatial awareness. But as the year went on, he was able to use those same qualities to be such a highly productive center iceman. I think that was such a great development for him. So many questions about whether he'd be used on the wing or at center. He wasn't used exclusively at center, but he was used the majority of the time at center. And his ability to distribute the puck and to get to the areas where he was able to get that shot off. And all we hear about Perfetti is about his passing. Well, ask Freddie Anderson about his shot. I mean, let's go here. I mean, come on. Like, here's a guy who, his highlight reel is impressive in itself, but when one of those goals is against a National Hockey League goaltender, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. And we saw a glimpse of the future. I mean, Cole Perfetti off the half wall, whether he was shooting or as the guy setting up the one-timer or looking for a seam pass, I mean, this is an impressive development. I mean, this is a guy who nobody benefited more in this year of the pandemic season than Cole Perfetti, where some of his colleagues didn't even play a single hockey game, or maybe were limited to a U18 tournament or something else like that. But man, what a great development for the Jets. And this is the next chapter, the unknown chapter, and the chapter that no one thought would be written. Here's the cliffhanger, not cliffhanger ending, but if you will, this is a development that is massive. But I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff also left the door wide open for Cole Perfetti to flat out earn a job with the Winnipeg Jets next year. Super interesting. Like, so where the framing of that I thought was really interesting. I mean, we know that, the chance or opportunity, if it's not going well, now you can do what you did with Kyle Connor, where he spent the first 2 months in the National Hockey League, have a chance. It's not just sink or swim because your options are NHL or OHL. Now you got this longer, trajectory or runway to see what is going to happen. And you have a chance, if he's going to be productive and if he's playing top 9 minutes, well, now you keep him a little bit longer. But if you hit a little bit of a bump in the road like Kyle Connor did in that rookie season, now you have a chance to send him to the American Hockey League. Mark Morrison would embrace Cole Perfetti with open arms the same way that he did when Kyle Connor arrived there. Probably, if you're Kyle Connor, you left after that freshman season at Michigan, where I had a chance to watch him once at Yost Arena. He wasn't thinking that he would have to spend any time in the American Hockey League, but that was probably some of the most important time that Kyle Connor ever spent with Pascal Vincent and Mark Morrison. I mean, nobody thinks that way at the time, right? Of course, we know this, Dave. We've been around American Hockey League players. You always think you should be in the next league. There's always something happening to work against you. But once you get past that initial disappointment, like Kyle Connor did, he reinvigorated his scoring touch. And that scoring touch has led him to become a dominant sniper at the NHL level. So different situations, obviously, but I think there are also some similarities potentially between those two players. But I also do think that Cole Perfetti, and again, I always err on the side of needing more time. And we know this because we watched Mark Scheifele needed 3 full cracks to make it in the NHL, and that isn't bad. You did it because you gave you the chance to become a real star by being able to go back and playing in a World Junior, and that's the other part that's super interesting, and how the Jets handled David Gustafsson. So for Cole Perfetti, he was an important piece of Team Canada this year, but he would be a star player and a core piece and probably a first-line player at this year's World Junior. So now you have the opportunity, similar to Gustafsson, but that opportunity wouldn't normally be available. So, I mean, and the other thing that's important too, and you still could send him back, and no better example than Leon Draisaitl. And I know this because I covered the Western Hockey League final that year. Draisaitl spent all that time with the Edmonton Oilers, went to the World Junior, then was traded by Prince Albert to Kelowna, went back in January, won a Western Hockey League championship, played in the Memorial Cup, and then became a full-timer with the Edmonton Oilers. So this doesn't mean that the player is stagnating. It doesn't mean that his development is being impacted negatively. It means that you give yourself the best chance to be the best player that you can be. And the other part too, if he has to start with the Manitoba Moose, go out and dominate, right? Go out and dominate, but that's the beauty of it. If you play your 9 games with the Jets and you have to be moved down, you had to go to the Ontario Hockey League, then you can't come back unless there's an emergency situation, or you come back at the end of the season when your junior season is done. Now you have the opportunity that it might only be a minor setback or a little bump in the road. You can send them, and now all of a sudden you're ready to be back in the NHL. That is a massive development for the Jets and for Perfetti. And of course it's hard for Kevin Cheveldayoff. He's a product of the Western Hockey League, so from his playing time. So he knows the impact and what it would mean for Saginaw. If the Saginaw Spirit don't have Cole Perfetti back, that's a big draw at the gate. That's a big member of their team. But this situation is different. I mean, he would fall under that category of players that don't really have a ton more to prove at the junior hockey level. So one of the things that, I mean, where do you draw the line? That's a tough thing. But with Perfetti, we know that he's ready at minimum to be an American Hockey League regular. So it's going to be very interesting to monitor. And, let's not forget, this is his first NHL training camp, right? Yeah. I mean, this is a guy that, because he was at the World Junior, yes, he had his one skate with the Jets, but that was after, that was after your quarantine. That was after World Junior. You weren't part of it. So this is really his first camp. So he's going to be as ready as possible. So, and we have another pick to announce, and
we have another two
as we thought, the player that some folks were hoping would drop to the Jets is not going to be available.
Right, but let's go to the player before that first.
Sure.
There's two picks we have to announce. The first one from Ottawa came way off.
Both sons of former NHLers, Drew.
Tyler Boucher goes to Ottawa at number 10 overall, and I got to tell you, nobody had Tyler Boucher going that high at all. I'm using the future considerations draft guide.
I'm looking for him. Where is he?
Yeah. Number 94, Dave, is where you can find Tyler Boucher.
It's Brian Boucher's kid, Drew.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that nobody had him as a first-round pick, and nobody had him as a top 10 first-round pick. So that'll certainly be the Ottawa Senators going off the board in their selection of Tyler Boucher. And then the Columbus Blue Jackets wasted no time at all and quickly ran up to the podium, or the virtual podium as the case may be, and selected Cole Sillinger, a centerman from the United States Hockey League, plays for Sioux Falls. To your point, Ezzy, another son of a former NHLer. I mean, the Cole Sillinger pick makes a lot of sense. The Tyler Boucher one does not make as much sense.
Well, and obviously, we'll let Kenny jump in here again. Teams amateur scouting, they have go back to Mark Scheifele. Nobody thought he would go 7th overall back in 2011, and now he's a top 10 center in the NHL. But just wanted to throw this in, Kenny, quickly. I might be mistaken here. I know that Mike Sillinger played for the Blue Jackets. I believe he was taken in the expansion draft. I might have to look that up, but he definitely did play for the Blue Jackets. So pretty cool that his son is now going to play for the Blue Jackets, and I believe he still has the record for most teams played for, or he's second. I think it was around 12 or 13. So great pick for Columbus at number 12.
Yeah, and I would also quickly say that I believe that Cole Sillinger was a guy that was probably in the sights of the Calgary Flames. So as quick as the Columbus Blue Jackets were to run to the virtual podium, I think the one team that may not be thrilled with the selection is the team that is right after them. To me, this is super interesting because this is where kind of Matthew Coronado has started to come into the equation here, where you have just an elite level goal scorer. And I also, too, I guess the other thing we should look at is maybe a Chaz Lucius, right? So he's a guy that is right around that 10 range, 10 to 12 or 10 to 14, or depending on which mocks you're looking at. He would have some appeal also going to the University of Minnesota coming up here. From what we understand, I think Coronado may be a little bit more fleet of foot, but neither one of them known as a burner, but both really great goal scorers. So going to be super interesting. And again, I don't think that the Flames would be dipping their toes into the goalie waters after having Jacob Markstrom there, especially with maybe somehow their goaltending picks have gone of late, whether it's a John Gillies or prior to that. But I think this is the part. The draft always gets interesting, but this is what we always had heard, right? Around the 12th player mark, this is where the divergence comes in. Not saying it's 13 to 50, but a lot of the lists right now for NHL teams, this is where it gets really interesting. So that's why, with the Jets kind of now, closer in the rearview mirror with now objects are closer than they appear. This is the time where the Winnipeg Jets folks that are, huddled around the virtual table, this is where things really start to get interesting, especially with those two goalies, still neither one of them off the board yet.
Well, let me ask you that. Let me follow up on that, Kenny. You talk about sort of at this stage of the draft, beauty is very much in the eye of the beholder. And certainly, that's clearly the case with Ottawa, with Tyler Boucher there. Do you think that the Jets might be in a position where they either trade up if there's a guy that they love more than anyone else, or flip side, that if there's a collection of players that they like, might put a for sale sign on their pick and see if anybody wants to come up and move up and help the Jets acquire a few more picks potentially for tomorrow or years later?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't have a great feel for that. Sean Reynolds and I were discussing this earlier on a phone call. Whether how to interpret Kevin Cheveldayoff's comment when he was asked about the draft. I mean, to me, I think it's most likely they will pick where the pick is, but you could see a reverse engineer Logan Stanley trade here, couldn't you? I mean, if you look at a team that has an early second along with the first, well, of course you'd consider it, but I also think we're at the stage where I still think it's most likely they will make the pick. The cost is almost always too high to move up, especially when you are dealing with limited draft capital with only the 4 selections currently. I mean, do I think that Sami Niku is going to be a member of the Winnipeg Jets after tomorrow? I would say most likely unlikely. I think that Sami Niku is a player that probably could potentially be moved to help that draft capital. And there we go, Matthew Coronato. Like I said, I'm not trying to be a mock draft specialist here, but
you're an oracle, Kenny.
Oh yeah, that one to me made a whole lot of sense. So, not surprised there.
The numbers he put up with Chicago this year in the USHL. I mean,
impressive.
51 games played, 48 goals, 37 assists. Sure, he's small, but I think and we have Craig Button coming on at some point in the next 30 or so minutes, give or take, and he spoke about it on our show on Saturday. He said, are we not done with this for now? Have we not seen enough small players come in and do the things that they do that it no longer has to be, a main talking point when we talk about
his brother just made the pick, right? Because his brother's the director of amateur scouting for the Flames, so he'll really have a lot to say about Matthew Coronato.
Well, he would know him better than anyone else, right?
Exactly.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Todd. You mean I'm like Coronato has a brother that? No. Todd Button. Yes, of course.
Todd
Very
Button.
good. Very good.
Yeah. So I'm sure Craig.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to also intervene here. That was a great segment with Craig. I listened to it on one of my walks through the Bois d'Esprit forest here this week. So shout out to the excellent work with Craig Button there. I really enjoyed. That was part of my research as well. Craig, we know, has an opportunity to watch a lot of these guys. A lot more than I do. So I felt like I learned a lot from that segment for sure.
Yes. So to your point there, the Calgary Flames, they select Matthew Coronato of the Chicago Steel of the USHL, and now the Buffalo Sabres are on the clock. Kenny, you're welcome to stay with us. If you have somewhere to go, let us know. And you've certainly been more than generous with your time. But if you want to stay with us,
I'm going to keep going. But I may, when we get to 16, I may mute myself to get a couple quick tweets out, and then I'll come back I'll just stick around for the reaction. How about that? I mean, this is why we're here. We want to have reaction.
But send out a tweet that you've joined us. Why don't you send out a tweet saying that, and you can the legions of Kenny Weed fans can come and join the rest of you who are joining us on this Friday night. This will give me an opportunity to do a quick reset. Good evening to everybody. Nice to see so many familiar faces, so many new faces joining us. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Draft coverage of the first round of the 2021 NHL Draft. We'll be at it again tomorrow morning with extended day 2 coverage starting at 10 a.m. Central Time. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Dave Minuk is with us. Ezra Ginsburg with us. Ken Wiebe of Sportsnet is with us. You're with us. Nice to see so many of you as we talk about this 2021 NHL Draft. The Buffalo Sabres on the clock, 2.5 minutes to go. We know the Sabres started things off earlier tonight selecting Owen Power, first overall, the defenseman from the University of Michigan. This is the pick that they acquired from the Philadelphia Flyers earlier today in exchange for Rasmus Ristolainen. So the Buffalo Sabres are fast forwarding their year 25 of their rebuild with the 2 different draft picks that they have in the first top 15 tonight.
Right, and you wonder, this is kind of just off the top of my head here, stream of consciousness, but you wonder if the Sabres go after one of these goalies, right? Jesper Wallstedt or Sebastian Kosa. Like, you've got Jukka-Pekka Luukkonen, easy for me to say, in your system right now, but you wonder if especially with Owen Power at number 1, you wonder, Kenny, if the Sabres might go after one of these goaltenders. But as you were saying earlier, I mean, it was wide open at 2nd or 3rd overall, and now we're getting into 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th overall. It's kind of hard to predict who some of these teams are going to go with right now.
Well, the big thing, we don't expect the Rangers are pretty set in goal. So, could St. Louis go goalie? Man, maybe. But most of the teams that were were expected to be in the conversation, they've already picked. So that's why, does that mean there's a reluctance, or does that mean somebody else is sitting at the table with their eyes wide saying, let's go out and get this goalie here, right? That's the big thing that we don't know, right? So I'm very curious to see how this is going. There's a lot of very good players available on the board, as we know, and I think that Buffalo would make a lot of sense to me for a goaltender. What's the biggest issue that the Buffalo Sabres have? It's goaltending, so go out and get one. They're not going to be playing this year, but to me it makes almost too much sense to go out and do it, depending on which guy they like better. But I think that you also have to maybe consider that one of the reasons they traded for that first round pick was because they had their eyes on one of those goalies. But, somebody could also be sitting at that table and saying, well, Chaz Lucius is a guy who could score a ton of goals, and we know that if Jack Eichel is eventually moved, and man, there's even talk about Sam Reinhart today being on the move potentially. So
he doesn't want to be there long term. If
you're moving one of those two guys and potentially both, now all of a sudden you got to restock the scoring shelves. So
yeah. You need centerman. You're absolutely right. That would make a lot of sense. This would be right around where most people thought Lucius would go, give or take a couple picks. But you're right about the goaltending. And then you look, Dallas won't need a goaltender. They took Jake Ottinger a couple years ago, so they're pretty set in goal. New York is, Shesterkin's going to be the goalie for the next decade there, all things being equal. And St. Louis, how comfortable, how set are they on Jordan Binnington? He's had I'd say more downs than ups since the Stanley Cup run. So, and then of course you got the Winnipeg Jets right afterwards, and it's hard to believe the Jets would be in the market for a goaltender. Although you did articulate earlier, Kenny, some very logical thinking as to why maybe that isn't the case. But it seems like Connor Hellebuyck should be the goalie for the next decade for the Jets at the very least.
Yeah, no doubt. And Fedor Svechkov is also a guy that I've heard a lot of great things about. We know the Jets haven't picked a Russian in the first round since Alexander Burmistrov, but Svechkov, very strong two-way game, and some folks that I spoke with, had him in the sort of Ryan O'Reilly discussion in terms of what kind of game that he plays. Not flashy, but an excellent two-way player. So he's going to be a guy that is in this range too, this 14 to 16 range. So very curious to see how that all shakes down, if you will.
It will be very interesting. The Buffalo Sabres pick is in, so the Jets are 4 picks away as we're getting closer and closer to crunch time in this first round of the 2021 NHL Draft. Hopefully, the last time this is ever done virtually, and we can all maybe be in Montreal, or at least some of us can be in Montreal next year, in person for this for the NHL Draft. It's always
hit up a patio with Kenny on Crescent Drive. We'll
you have to work hard on the Friday. You got to work hard on the Saturday, and then maybe the Saturday evening you can hit up those patios. But it is.
Here we go. Isaac Rosen, a guy that I had mentioned being in the wheelhouse of the Jets. So here he is going to Buffalo. So that opening up things for sure. And
Isaac Rosen, a right winger out of Sweden. He played in the Swedish Elite League last year. He played 22 games there, playing with the men in Sweden. Played in the junior league the year before that, and put up some, basically a point a game. So again, a young prospect, skinny. You can fax him from room to room if fax machines were still a thing. Only 156 pounds, but that's what you get oftentimes when you're drafting 18-year-old kids.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And definitely, we're all looking forward to to Montreal. That's something I think that was there've been some epic trips over the years, and once out, now that I have everyone's attention, I mean, it's a lifetime of memories with the illegal curves. I mean, these are guys that in a year where our budget was quite low at one of my previous employers, I have slept on cushions on the floor in the illegal curve, the spacious illegal curve suite. I believe that was Philadelphia. So, and as we also know, I still owe Dave some dry cleaning from that trip. That one of those epic dinners with Jeff O'Neill.
What was it? A little red wine, I think, Kenny.
Yeah, my hands. I was so excited telling a story. The wine was flying, and it wasn't because it was being drunk. It was being flipped over right onto this beautiful shirt of Dave's.
Actually, Kenny, we're actually wearing the shirt right now just to show you.
Sorry, is this a Seinfeld episode where
the very shirt you destroyed?
I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld lately. There have been a lot of laughs there, and there's no doubt that every time I see that episode, there's a pang of guilt that flows through my body. There's no doubt about that.
You know what, Kenny? The shirt was worth sacrifice based on having that story with you. It was worth it.
That was a great dinner right there.
It was a great dinner.
One of the great dinners of road trip history. There's no doubt about that. What a great find, and we will have to give a shout out to Gary Lawless on that one. I believe he set up the meal in that Italian restaurant, and some legendary stories were told, and not by me. I did a lot of listening that night.
And if I recall correctly, he was extremely irritated with us because we walked to the restaurant and we took forever to get there. So they were already well into the second bottle of wine by the time we showed up, a little bit late.
Legal curve, fashionably late. Hey, Drew, fashionably late. That's how you roll. Oh, you're back
muted.
To muted.
I don't know why Drew keeps muting himself.
Don't tell him, Kenny. We like him on mute.
I accidentally kicked my mic out, is what happened there. So I'm back now. So I'm sure you missed me not being able to speak there for a second, but hopefully.
We didn't miss anything, Drew.
You didn't miss anything? Okay, fair enough. I can't remember though, Kenny. Did we subject you to Ezzy snoring, or did we put you in the other room?
I don't think I was in that room because I would have remembered it. I would have remembered it. I think.
Yeah, no, that was pre-CPAP. That was pre-CPAP, pre-female relationship, Kenny.
You guys took care of me on that one. There's no doubt about that.
If we really wanted to initiate you, that's what we would have done. We really would have subjected you to something at that point.
We love Kenny too much. We would never do that to him. We would only do that to our worst enemies.
Oh, we have a trade to announce. Speaking of which.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
I think we're going to hold on. The first trade, Kenny, is trading Kenny Wheat for Drew Mindell.
We've obviously got a new host now.
Look, the difference is Kenny's watching on a television. I'm watching on a computer, so there's a bit of a delay here. That's the reality of the unfortunate. The electrical room that doubles as my studio is not quite as fancy. It looks like Detroit is moving up and Dallas is moving down. If that's the trade that I'm understanding so far. If anyone else has any details, feel free to chime in right now. But it looks like Detroit is on the clock instead of the Dallas Stars.
I don't have any details here either. I've got a great setup, except the computer is blocking the majority of my TV. I can see the pics on the right, but I don't have a good
so according to Elliot Friedman, Detroit is moving from 23 to 15. So Dallas moving down 8 spots. Detroit moving up.
A goaltender here.
It's got to be, I would think so.
Yeah. Or I would have to think, Kenny, it might be Fyodor Svechkov, but it could be Jesper Wallstedt as well.
That's the thought, is that it'll be Wallstedt.
Well, we will see momentarily what the actual pick is. The first trade, I mean, and usually if the NFL can be used as any barometer, what's this going to cost the Red Wings? Maybe a 4th round pick as well, Kenny, something like that?
Good question.
Yeah,
good question.
I think it's not going to be an overwhelming cost, especially for a Red Wings team that has more than enough assets as they've bottomed out as of late in order to start the rebuild in full.
Yeah, and Elliot Friedman is reporting that it's Dallas is moving from 23 to 15, but I don't think we have.
I said that.
But I'm just saying. No, I did listen, Drew. I'm just saying that I don't think we know what
he doesn't know what he's saying. Yeah. He doesn't know what the other pieces are.
Yeah,
I gotcha. So we will find out.
I'm not sure if you were reading Elliot or somebody else. That's why I was just because usually Elliot's the first one to that type of news, right?
It's picks 48 and 138 from Dallas.
Okay, so a bigger price than I thought they'd have to pay. That would be a second rounder and a 4th rounder to move up 8 spots.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's a decent. That's
But my
more than I
math
would
isn't
have
the greatest.
expected. Yeah, no, whatever it is, it's certainly paying a bigger price than I would have expected. Here, Bettman's announcing it. Dallas is trading pick number 15 to Detroit for picks number 23, 48, and 138. So that's that's a second and a fourth. Interesting. So we shall see momentarily what that selection is. Our fifth rounder is what people in the chat are saying. Is that our old friend Allie K is joining us in the chat tonight? How about that?
Awesome.
Wow,
Allie
K.
Yeah, that goes back to the Red River Kick FM days, Drew.
That's going way. Allie K, for those of you who do not know, made us a promise. God, this has got to be 12, 13 years ago now, that she would fly into Winnipeg for the Jets home opener. She lives in Arizona. What's that?
2011, 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, but no, I'm trying to think when we first. Yeah, I know when the Jets home opener was, but when we first met Allie K years ago now, she flew into Winnipeg despite having no ties to Winnipeg, without a ticket.
Yeah.
Yep. And went and bought a ticket. She was in line at the box office, got in to see the Jets home opener, the return of the Jets to Winnipeg, and we haven't seen Allie in years. Allie, it's great to see you. She's joining us on the Facebook chat as well. Nice to see so many of you on the Facebook chat, the YouTube chat, our Twitter feed, wherever you may be joining us from.
That's
so
an
nice
icy miracle right there. That's awesome.
We're going.
The gift that keeps on giving. Hey, Ezzy, there you go. Gift that keeps on giving.
Love That's right. This is the Wayback Machine is live and in charge tonight, and this is sort of what live radio is like, folks. When things like this, when you do live broadcasts of events like this, it's a little bit of multitasking, certainly keeping an eye on three or four different windows. Controlled chaos. I think last year or 2 years ago, I described it as close as I'm ever going to get to landing planes, and I always thought that was a bit of an apropos metaphor as we sit here with the Detroit Red Wings now on the clock, despite the fact that I think Dallas's time had expired. And now Detroit gets an extra 5 minutes.
So we're at pick 15 right now, right, Drew? And, the way things are going, the Jets are probably going to pick at, midnight?
Not too far off. At least certainly another, 20 minutes or so from now. Right around 9 o'clock is probably when they're going to maybe make their selection after everyone's waited on for a couple hours. And we'll see what happens, obviously with the second round starting tomorrow at 10 a.m., if there's anybody that drops, if there's anybody that falls, there's always those conversations that happen after the first round. Remember, I think was it 2 years ago that it was between rounds 1 and round 2 that PK Subban got traded from Nashville to New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. I think that happened after day 1 of the draft a few years ago. And so there's always a possibility for some more excitement between the end of tonight's round 1 and the start of tomorrow's round 2, which usually goes a lot quicker.
Well, hey, if we need to, then we can always do a pop-up show. Kenny will come back. He'll finish whatever writing he has to do for the Jets pick, and then he'll come back and we'll do a pop-up show till 2 a.m. We'll get Sean in his I don't know why he took that picture in his bathroom with his bathing
Somebody's
suit.
Somebody's got to teach Sean how to take a selfie.
Sean's selfie game is not strong.
Yeah,
but,
I mentioned to him that he should have gone with the waist up shot on that one.
I mean, Sean, we get it. You're in good shape, but you need to chill with
here it is. Kosa.
Oh. Ooh,
it's Kosa. Okay, there you go. So they take the goaltender out of the Edmonton Oil Kings. So that's
second Oil King taken.
Yeah, 2 Oil Kings taken in the first 15, and 3 Michigan Wolverines taken in the top 15. So it's a good day to be an Oil King and a Wolverine.
Absolutely. And Kenny, we didn't really talk about this earlier, but what a day for Stevie Yzerman and, his goaltending depth, right? Like Alex Nedeljkovic, Dave would know, how successful he was in the American Hockey League, but you're kind of wondering, it seemed like that was a bit of a steal for the Red Wings, acquiring him for the Hurricanes. So now you've got Nedeljkovic and then, Sebastian Kosa, who was, by far, the highest rated North American goaltender. So really impressive. The Red Wings, have gone from, having a bit of a weakness organizationally there in goal, and now they get their top goalie prospect in Kosa.
For the life of me, I don't understand the Hurricanes' logic there. I know you spoke about it, Kenny, about, they put a small internal cap on what they're going to spend on goaltenders, but $3 million for a guy who finished third in Calder Trophy voting seems like a small price to pay on a 2-year deal, and I don't quite understand
He had a 930 save percentage last year, Drew. Like, he was great for the Hurricanes.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't understand the logic. I mean, if you're not going to spend $3 million on a goaltender, boy, are you asking to really find some diamonds in the rough on a year-over-year basis, Kenny. Yeah,
it's very interesting. I mean, we know Tom Dundon runs things a certain way, and he places a certain value. This value applied to a coaching staff or a guy who may have been the highest chased after coaching free agent had that deal not come to fruition. And the super interesting thing there, guys, that we know is, I mean, if that's not Rod Brind'Amour, the coach walks in almost every other situation. Rod Brind'Amour doesn't need the money. That's why the money doesn't matter to Rod Brind'Amour. He made enough in his career that he didn't have to draw a line in the sand and say, you must pay me this or I'm out of here, right? I mean, that's one of the things that prevented him from leaving, but it was more important for Brind'Amour to bring back the majority of his staff, and I think to get those guys a raise. So, I mean, speaking of risks, I mean, there have been a lot of calculated risks. Some people would say that this would be, a pretty heavy risk. I mean, in terms of your calculations, I mean, but let's see how it plays out. I mean, we know there's guys available. I mean, does this mean, if this means they're in the discussion for a Marc-Andre Fleury or a guy who, has a little bit longer track record than Nedeljkovic, well, then let's reserve judgment. But he certainly has put himself into a situation where you certainly open yourself up to criticism. This is a team that is in win now mode, right? I mean, This is a team that has had some playoff success. They have their core group, under contract, the majority of them, for a long time, and they've got a great defense core. They have a good group of forwards, but you're rolling the dice a little bit if you're not, you got great goaltending. I mean, for a guy who was on waivers last year, right? I mean, that's the other part about Nedeljkovic. I mean, he was basically the number 3 guy at one point. So it's an interesting gamble for sure, and it is, fraught with risk. But let's see how the next, 4 or 5 days play out before we're ready to, to put them into the discard pile. But it certainly is certainly an interesting decision, and not necessarily one that many people will agree with. That's for sure.
You're right. The next shoe to drop is what the important part is, because they they get Bernier as part of the trade. Which are they getting Bernier in order to be able to negotiate and sign a deal with him? I mean, Bernier is a guy who's, his numbers. He's been playing on some bad teams as of late. And the Detroit Red Wings are a bad team. His numbers have been okay on a bad team. With the team I think probably Carolina, if they're interested in re-signing him, are thinking his numbers with our defense and our structure and our team in front of him are going to bounce back significantly. Peter Mrazek, he's still there. James Reimer from Manitoba, he's still there pending UFA. So, yeah, you're muted, Dave. Morwena, Manitoba. I can see what your lips were saying there, though, buddy. But, lots of the other shoe to drop is certainly going to be very interesting in Carolina. In what I think still was a disappointing end to their season. They had, they were flying high for a while there, and they went out pretty meekly in the second round of the playoffs this year. And I don't think that they're necessarily thrilled with how their season came to an end, especially with all the talent and everything else that's on their back end in particular.
Yeah, I mean, the next moves are always the most fascinating ones to me, and if it were obvious what the next move would be, we'd all have the answer, right? That's the other part. That they're also an organization that kind of runs with this air of uncertainty is not the right word, but they kind of keep you guessing a little bit. So. And it's not getting any easier for them, right? I mean, with the realignment and everything else, they're still going to be in a tough division. So I think it's super interesting to see what happens next. But is there does that they just made a bold move? Does that mean there's another bold one to come, or does that mean that they're going to roll the dice with the Detroit model, where you're rolling with the Chris Osgood type and you think you just need adequate goaltending and you don't necessarily need to be spending $6 to $8 million on one, right? I mean, that's the big question mark here. But I'm with you, Drew. I mean, $3 million for a goaltender on a bridge deal, like, if you're looking for a bigger bargain than that, I mean, there aren't going to be. No. It's hard to find a guy with the track record that you can get at that price. I mean, and speaking of great stories this week, Chris Drieger, What a
Awesome
story. I mean, great job for another Manitoba guy who had to scratch and claw his way through the ECHL. I mean, this is a great story. And he earned a 3.5 by 3-year deal. So good on him. I thought it was great to see him in Seattle.
Let me ask you, your new name is Kenny Francis. Would you have taken Carey Price?
It's a great question. I mean, what have we been talking?
You on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. I think there were in a lot of ways, I could have been convinced to take him for sure. But when we're having this discussion, what's the biggest thing we're talking about when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens? Despite how great Carey Price has played in the playoffs, the biggest question about whether they can take the next step is that $10.5 million cap hit. So if you're Seattle, are you comfortable? I mean, Carey will be turning 34 years old, I believe, this year. I don't know. It's a great question. Philosophically, it's a great question. I don't have a great answer. I understand why they didn't do it. I also could say if I wanted somebody on the posters that I think could produce really good hockey and has some cachet in the region, it would have been a smart pickup. But I can also understand why you wouldn't want to be, if salary cap is your biggest weapon, can you saddle your franchise with a $10.5 million cap hit for, I think it's 5 more years, right? I mean, including this next year. So that's the biggest deterrent to me. If you're just basing it on how Carey Price played in the last 2 playoffs, I mean, of course you would have gone for it. But speaking of the draft, here's another guy's story. I meant to. He was in my story. I meant to bring him up earlier. The Flint Firebirds left winger who played the season in Switzerland. A lot of people love Brennan Othman. He's a guy that has a little bit of feistiness to him. He can shoot. He can score. He'd played with Shane Wright, I believe, in dating back to minor hockey. I think at the U18 they played together. But this is a guy he's played with growing up a little bit. So he's a great, really good finisher. And he plays with a little bit of edge. So I had him kind of in that range for the Jets. But 2 guys that I had in the range, it's the reverse Cole Perfetti. 2 guys were big risers and they were not available at 18. So that's not a big loss for the Jets. But he's a guy that probably would have been right in their wheelhouse as well. But sorry, to get back to Price, Cale Fleury, I mean, also stick-tapped Eric Engels. That's who he thought that Seattle would be grabbing. I think that Jonathan Drouin would have been interesting to me. Obviously, not knowing what's going on personally, I think there were some positive developments on that front mentioned by Marc Bergevin this week as well. But he would have been interesting. I mean, there's only 2 years on that deal, but that would have had some appeal. I think that, we talk about calculated risks all week here when it comes to expansion. Marc Bergevin made a bold move, and it didn't bite him either. And, he's now got some salary cap space to maneuver with. Should also say too, guys, I mean, Shea Weber is a guy that we watched for a long time. I covered that camp here in 2004 in December when Team Canada was here with that literally all-world team, the best world junior team ever assembled.
And will ever be assembled.
Yeah, I mean, just such an incredible human being, and it's a sad way for him to potentially end his career for a guy who has given so much to the sport. I know he played his 1,000th game earlier this year, and he's a guy we watched a ton in the Central before that trade to the Montreal Canadiens as well. And soft-spoken guy, but a guy who really loved the game or loves the game and plays with such incredible passion. And man, just seeing that player at 18 years old to the player that he has become has been a real treat. To, we all love hockey, and those are people you love watching, and to see their not quite origin story, but pretty close. Pretty, sad day for hockey if Shea Weber can't play another game, that's for sure.
Let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets. The St. Louis Blues have 2 minutes and 11 seconds in which to make their pick. Then the Jets themselves will be on the clock. I have to believe there's some players available that the Jets did not think would be there necessarily for them at this pick. I think the Jets are probably pretty pleased with how this draft board has unfolded itself. Right now, I mean, obviously it's Kevin Cheveldayoff, I think, is in an enviable position. And, I say that, and they always talk about, to your point, I think Kenny made it earlier. Oh, we had no idea. We never expected that guy to be there. I think that's true with a couple. They say it every year. Everybody says it every year. I think it's been true a couple times for the Winnipeg Jets.
Kyle Connor especially. Kyle Connor was one.
Kyle Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, I think, as well. And I think last year with Cole Perfetti, the Jets did not expect him to be there. Could that be another situation like that? Are the Jets going, most people had sort of thought the Jets would be focused on defense when their pick would come up. There is still some intriguing offensive talent out there. And I look at Fabian Lysell, the Swedish right winger, who was described earlier to me in an article I read that said he's a Swedish Nikolai Ehlers. Well, he's a zone entry master and a zone exit master. Well, those are two things the Jets have struggled with. And obviously he's not going to step right into the Jets lineup, but it'll be very interesting to see how the next pick unfolds. The Jets are now on the clock. The St. Louis Blues have selected 17th overall Zachary Bolduc out of the QMJHL. So the Winnipeg Jets, they're now on the clock.
Yeah, and you wonder, sorry, go ahead, Kenny.
No, you go ahead. I'll finish this tweet off and we'll get back to it.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, we've talked a lot about Fedor Svechkov. We talked Craig Button, obviously really likes him. He's going to hop on with us in the next couple minutes here. And obviously, Corson Kuhlman's, Carson Lambos, the two defensemen, those are options here for the Jets. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to predict who the Jets are going to go with, as we just talked about. I mean, people have tried to kind of get inside the heads of the Jets amateur scouting staff, but I think those three players are definitely options here.
Well, speak of the devil, here he is, TSN Director of Scouting, a good friend of ours. Craig Button joins us on the show now. Craig, welcome. You have Ken Wiebe here as well, myself, Ezzy, Dave. It's quite the menagerie of people joining us for this 2021 first-round broadcast. Nice to see you this evening.
Well, it's nice to see you got a first-round draft pick and Ken on the show finally. Not a scrub like me.
Craig, I'm just the opening act here. I'm the opening act.
Well, hey, listen, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're a main act, Ken. You don't be telling me that you're an opening act.
So, Craig, the Jets on the clock, and obviously the interest here is sky high. The way this first round has unfolded, I guess, sort of what are your thoughts on the first 17 selections, and what do you think the Jets are going to do with their selection here at number 18 overall?
Well, I think the Jets are going to draft a really good player, because if you look at the record has been exemplary when it comes to the draft. And you know what? I think they do that every year. I think they draft in every single round really well, and they know what they're looking for. They're confident in what they're looking for, and then they get after it and they develop it. Is every player going to turn out? No, but they understand that as well. I think they have a real great opportunity to draft a really good player. Now, whether it's going to be a defenseman or whether it's going to be a forward, time will tell here, and we'll know shortly. So, in my mock draft, I looked at Corson Kuhlman's and thought that he would be a nice fit, a right shot defenseman. But, there's lots of good players available to the Winnipeg Jets at this pick. As for the draft up to this point, 17 picks, I don't see anything that's surprising. I mean, one of the things, and you guys know I've said this all the time when I come on the show, don't talk about off the board, because the teams selecting have their own boards. And when they select a player, they're not going off of their own board. So, you can look at it. I think we had a pretty strong idea after the first pick that who the players were going to be after that through 8, 9. And, we didn't know the order, but we had a pretty strong idea, and I think that played out. Now you get after that and you start to see, the Red Wings trade up to get Sebastian Cossa. Doesn't surprise me one bit, because it's a scenario where I thought that Cossa could be the first goalie drafted. I think he's close enough to Jesper Wallstedt to consider that. And, as you move forward and you watch what teams are doing, after that first 8, 9 picks, there's a real good opportunity to draft different types of players, but no less of quality.
Craig, as we kind of wait, a few more minutes here for the Jets to make their selection, we were kind of joking going back to 13, your brother, of course, having a big say in that pick, drafting Matthew Coronado, Cole Sillinger going right before that to the Columbus Blue Jackets. But safe to say that the Flames, your brother, the entire organization, really happy with the player that they got at 13th overall?
I'm going to say this. I know they are. But if you find an NHL team that isn't happy with the player they select during the first round, please let me know. Because not only do I hear how happy they are, I also always hear how surprised they are that that player was there. I mean, one day somebody's going to come out and say after they select first overall.
Sorry, Ken.
We were
Sorry. Craig, let me interrupt you for a second.
Yep.
The Jets have selected from the U.S. National Team Development Program, a program they've had a lot of success from before. Chaz Lucius goes to the Jets, 18th overall, a centerman, 6'1", 185. Chaz Lucius is the answer to who the Winnipeg Jets 2021 draft pick will be, first-round pick will be. Another member of the Minnesota Mafia, hometown of Grant, Minnesota, coming north eventually, hopefully, to Winnipeg to be a member of the Jets.
Chaz is a really good goal scorer. He was hampered by some injuries in the last year or so, but he's got real good ability, and he's a multi-dimensional scorer. He can score from 35 to 40 feet out. He can score on the forehand. He can score on the backhand. He can score in tight. He's got that magnificent ability, and let me emphasize, magnificent ability to be able to open up goaltenders. And when he gets that opening and he sees that even the smallest of openings, his hands are so good that he can finish. You know, there's not very many players like Chaz Lucius in this NHL draft. And he talked about, you know, he felt that he was the best goal scorer in the draft. He is one of the best goal scorers in the draft, and there's no question about it. Going to the University of Minnesota, he's going to have an opportunity to develop and progress in his game. We know the Winnipeg Jets are patient with their development and patient with their players, but Chaz Lucius offers real good offensive ability and specifically scoring ability.
You know, this is a guy who, like you said, he's had a bit of an injury bug as of late. What do you think is the main sort of the main aspect of his game he needs to develop? Is it strictly a matter of getting stronger, or is there, you know, sort of one area that you would pinpoint, Craig, that this is something he needs to focus on as he begins his college career?
Every single player has to get stronger. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the first overall pick. These are 17 and 18-year-old kids. They all have to get stronger. They're not even close to maxing out or coming near to what their physical strength is going to be. And you can't speed it up. So it's going to take that time, and it needs to get there. But I would say about Chaz, it's just finding that extra gear, that extra pace, you know, that little half a step of quickness. You know, he knows where he wants to go, and he can get there. But, you know, you develop that explosive quickness. It's going to put defenders on their heels just a little bit sooner. And because he can score from distance, if he can create that possibility in defenders' minds that with that quickness he can go by them, well, now they got to defend him in two ways. They got to defend him off the shot, but then they can't get up too close to him because now he can beat them with that quickness. That's the area he's got to work on, in my view. And I think it's clearly an area that is developmental that just needs time. It's not an inherent weakness. It's a developmental weakness. And once he gets that, I think he becomes that much more dangerous.
You know, Craig, he's slated to go to the University of Minnesota next season. Is he the kind of player who you see staying in college for 2-3 years before he makes the jump to the NHL?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's not ready. I mean, there's no rush for him. I mean, Mark Scheifele was drafted 7th overall. It took him. He went back to junior for 2 years. Chaz Lucius going to the University of Minnesota, having an opportunity to play on the World Junior team. Bottom line is, this is a good path for him. It allows him to have the opportunity to take the time to develop. He's going to play high-level competition, not only at Minnesota, but also at the World Juniors. He should have an opportunity to play in 2 World Juniors. And then you can see where he's at upon the completion of his sophomore year. But there's no need to rush, and the vast majority of players need more time, not less, and it certainly applies to Chaz.
Craig Button, our guest. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, our special 2021 draft broadcast dealing with the first round. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central Time, rounds 2 through 7. We're going to be broadcasting as well. Winnipeg Jets have just selected at number 18 overall, Chaz Lucius, a centerman who's going to go to the University of Minnesota next season.
And Craig, just wanted to ask you specifically about the U.S. national team development program. We obviously know that it's such a highly respected and well regarded. I mean, the number of players that have come out of that program, I mean, is really endless. And specifically, the Jets, there's definitely no shortage of players. And the question I wanted to ask you was, why would maybe certain organizations lean towards that type of player? I mean, I don't necessarily know that, the Jets are any different than any organization, but maybe why would they, prefer to draft a player, that's going to, go to that program like the University of Minnesota out of the U.S. national program, as opposed to maybe going with a player, from the Western Hockey League?
My experiences are simple. Teams are looking for good players. It doesn't matter where you play. It doesn't really matter where you're going to play. You're trying to find the skills that translate to the NHL. And, the Winnipeg Jets draft Chaz Lucius because they see him as the player they want at 18, and they don't see any other player wherever they're playing. I don't care if they're playing right in the basement of Kevin Cheveldayoff. They're going to select the player that they think is the best player for them, regardless of passport, regardless of position, regardless of size or height or anything like that. That's the goal here. It's not about a preference of one or the other. You look back and let me just see, they drafted a Dane and Nikolai Ehlers. They drafted Josh Morrissey, a defenseman from Prince Albert. They drafted Mark Scheifele from Barrie. They drafted Kyle Connor from Youngstown. Now they draft Chaz Lucius. I think their record in the first round is just get us good players, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what language they speak or what their nationality is, and just help us be a good team. That's their mantra.
Craig Button, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Craig, if you look at at Chaz and his career thus far, are you surprised? Oh, looks like maybe Craig dropped off there for a second. So I will.
I here just a second. I'm here.
Okay.
Got me? Sorry.
Your camera seems to have turned off. There you are. You're back. There you go. Yeah. It's okay. In and out. If you can hear me, that's good enough.
I can hear you. Here we go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There you go. I was saying, Craig, when you look at a guy like Chaz, does he remind you of anybody in particular that, I know you get that question a lot, that currently would be in the league or formerly had been in the league? His skill set, does he remind you of anyone in particular?
Oh,
now I think you've muted yourself, Craig. No, still muted.
We're going to get Craig any second, I think.
No,
Kenny, fill in, Kenny.
These are big shoes to fill.
Yeah, Kenny can answer that question.
No,
You're
can't hear Craig.
We still can't hear you, Craig. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if the mute is on or what's going on, but as soon as you're able to fix that, we'll welcome you right back on to answer that question.
Hold on.
Okay, you seem to have you've muted yourself, so I don't know what you hit, but maybe hit that button again and you can unmute yourself.
Nope.
No, sorry. Live radio, live TV, live radio.
Might be the headphones.
I don't know if
I'm
not sure if Craig
I
knows
wonder
that
if
we
his
can't hear
headphones.
him. Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
his headphones.
Oh, there we
go. No.
No, still can't. No.
I wonder if it's maybe better to connect and reconnect.
Yeah, maybe we'll remove you and see if we can bring you back in, and that'll help.
Oh, and
Okay.
Fedor Svechkov is the next choice at 19 to the Nashville Predators.
There you go. So
Not sure what's happening there because Craig, I don't think he could hear himself, but
yeah.
hopefully get Craig back on.
Hopefully he'll join us. Why don't you text him, Ezzy, and see if he can, if he resolves that, we can get him back on. And speaking of people we're planning on having on, we're hoping to get Chaz Lucius to join us before we wrap up tonight's broadcast. But still a ways to go. The Edmonton Oilers now on the clock at number 20, and obviously that still means there's another. If my simple math tells me there's another 12 picks to go, so we're going to be here for a little while still.
Kenny, what do you think, Chaz Lucius? How do you like that pick?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a guy we talked about and a guy we weren't sure if he'd be available, but one of those Kyle Connor type droppers, and if great comparison, a really good goal scorer. Obviously, he doesn't have the speed or quickness necessarily that Kyle Connor had coming out of the USHL before he headed to the University of Michigan, but he's a guy that was spoken very highly of, and this is another player. And we talked about Carson Lambos earlier and how his injury impacted his draft status. Chaz Lucius is a guy who I believe was projected to be a top 10 pick originally. So he's a guy that obviously has a certain skill set, and you don't get into those discussions without being a very skilled hockey player. So I'd be very curious too, if you guys can get Craig back on. I'm curious to see if he believes he's more likely to be a centerman or a winger. Obviously, we know if you can score from distance, I mean, Mark Scheifele's a centerman that can score from distance, but I mean, are those guys better served on the wing? Super interesting. But I mean, obviously in the last 2 years, the Jets have had very skilled centermen drop into their lap is a little bit of an maybe exaggeration, but two really good players who were projected to go a little bit higher who ended up being there. And again, we're not in the promotion of saying, hey, we can't believe this guy fell to the team that you cover, but those are both scenarios where Cole Perfetti was not projected to go 10th overall on many boards, and here Chaz Lucius was not projected to go at 18 on many of the mock drafts. So we know that the teams have their own lists, as Craig talked about. This is a player who is very, very highly thought of, super good hockey intelligence, and we know that he has a really good and heavy shot. So and also too, the beauty of if you're a hockey fan and you like college hockey, you can travel quite easily to the University of Minnesota to watch Chaz Lucius play hockey, maybe even on a Minnesota Vikings weekend, wouldn't you say, Drew?
Are you suggesting, Ken, that I might be Googling the University of Minnesota schedule right now to see how it aligns with the Vikings schedule? That would be 100% what I would be doing right now.
November 15th to 16th.
Kenny, if only Jared Moe was still at the University of Minnesota.
Oh, there you go. Speaking of portal transfers right there, David, there you go. Nice work. Nice work on that front. I should probably roll. This has been fun, boys, and like I said, I'm happy to be the opening act, bringing in the headliner, Craig Button, who has many more viewings than I do on these guys. But it's been a lot of fun, as always. You guys are doing great work. And
thanks, Kenny.
Hope you can get Chaz on and enjoy the rest of the show and enjoy the...
Kenny, don't be afraid when you have Chaz, because you guys are gonna have a media conference call with him, I'm assuming very shortly. Send us all the good questions to ask him, because we're hoping to have him on after you guys. So once you've had all the good questions, the ones he responds to, feed those to me. My texts are open.
We'll warm them up for you. Boys. Have a great evening and a great weekend. Always good to talk to you.
You too,
there
Kenny.
He goes,
thanks.
Kenny Weeb joining us on the program. Take care, Kenny. We'll talk again real soon. Back to the original trio then, I guess. I mean,
there were three.
It's been a hectic evening so far. Hopefully, maybe Craig.
I haven't even updated the website, boys. I'm not happy right now.
Well, it's okay. You can update the website. Ezra and I will talk for a couple minutes here.
You guys take it away.
One thing, boys, that stands out here, about this pick is you think about, the center depth, Drew, that the Jets have right now with Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois, Adam Lowry, throw in David Gustafson there. And now you've got Cole Perfetti and you've got Chaz Lucius. And obviously, this is something we've talked about in the last couple of weeks. I mean, if Perfetti does play for the Jets this year, and obviously the Moose are now an option for him, there's a chance that he plays on the wing. But the reality is, at some point, these guys are going to be centers. They're natural centers. So, I mean, this is the future. These guys could be, the future 1-2 centers up the middle with Perfetti and Lucius.
A trade to announce. Edmonton is currently on the clock. They've traded down 2 spots. Minnesota moves up to number 20. Edmonton drops down to number 22 and also gets a pick number 90. So Edmonton gets moves down 2 spots and picks up a 3rd round pick in order for Minnesota to move up 2 spots. So the Minnesota Wild
right now, Drew, 20 or 21?
Minnesota's picking at number 20 right now, which was Edmonton's pick. but Minnesota is on the clock instead. And then the Oilers drop down 2 spots and pick up that extra 3rd round pick as a result. So seeing a little bit of movement of draft picks so far, but interesting that Minnesota has decided to move up. They obviously have somebody in mind that they want to leapfrog over, I guess, really the Boston Bruins in order to acquire that person. Wonder if it's a goaltender there. You think about Boston, Tuukka Rask, certainly not getting any younger by any means. And Minnesota, although Minnesota's, their goaltending was solidified last year, and they didn't lose, or they did lose. Did they lose Capo Kakkonen? No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
Which was a surprise.
They lost Carson Soucy.
Right. So there was a surprise.
Speaking of surprises, right? But Jesper Wallstedt could absolutely be an option here at 20 for Minnesota.
Could be a defenseman, though. You mentioned they lose Soucy.
Yeah, and exactly. Like Carson Lambos, Corson Kuhlman's, like obviously, different, scouts have them ranked differently, and we've been, mentioning the good folks, Aaron Vickers and others at future considerations. They had, Corson Kuhlman's, I believe he was in the top 20. Fabian Lysell, Drew, is another guy that you mentioned earlier that could have been an option for the Jets at 18. And you wonder, when he's going to go, because speaking of future considerations, they had him ranked as number 11. So we're at number 20 now. So you got to think Fabian Lysell is going to go in the next 2 or 3 picks here. Yeah.
And the knock on Fabian Lysell is that it was his shot, that he didn't have what would really be considered an elite shot, that, there was not a lot of, his shot needed some work and needed some improvements. Obviously a very slight kid. He needed to add some size,
but it's about the zone exits, baby. He's the zone exit master.
Well, that's certainly an important. attribute.
Zone entries. That's what I meant to say.
Zone entries and exits, getting out of his own zone. He could carry the puck up the ice on his own. So that was. I have to wonder if the Jets considered him, but the ability and the goal scoring ability. Because what's the hardest thing to do in hockey? It's score goals. That Chaz Lucius has been able to demonstrate. I wonder if that was maybe a bit of a tipping point for the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, we'll hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff in the next couple of days, and we'll hear what he has to say. And obviously, he won't say that what the insight's going to be. We can't believe that he dropped to us, because that's always what it is. But that's how it works. Anyways,
you have to say that, right, Drew?
You do have to say it. The Minnesota Wild now on the clock, then Boston, then Edmonton, then the Dallas Stars. And as I mentioned, we're hoping to hear from Chaz Lucius at a point before we wrap up tonight's broadcast. And same with all the draft picks tomorrow when we join you for a few hours of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Future considerations had Corson Kuhlman's at 12. So I think Kuhlman's is a guy that could easily go here 20 to Minnesota as well, Drew. So you were bang on there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's always very interesting at this point in the evening to see to see what's who the beauty of the eye of the beholder and everything else like that. I want. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get Craig back on, because I was going to ask him about the Ottawa selection, because that's the one that's been the most off the board tonight. I mean, that was the one where you had to go way deep in your scouting book in order to find the individual that the Ottawa Senators took. And I was curious. I know that Craig was saying that everybody's got a different draft board, and the Ottawa Senators draft board clearly was different than basically everybody else's. But it'd be interesting to hear what his thoughts were when the Ottawa Senators took Tyler Boucher at 10th overall, a guy that really nobody expected him to go in the first round at all.
Yeah, exactly. Like not even a first round pick, kind of like more of like a mid second round, late second round pick, right? But it happens every year, as you said, Drew. Like amateur scouts, like you can say whatever you want that these players are 17, 18 years old, but these guys, there's a reason why these guys are paid and employed by these teams, right? Like they know how to project future talent, and that's what Craig Button has always said on our show, right? Like they're not picking a player based on what he's going to do, in his last year of junior or his first year of university. They're projecting what these guys are going to be at the NHL level, right? So Tyler Boucher is absolutely, like a guy who's a little bit off the board, but, he's obviously a guy that, he's got some decent size and goal scoring ability. And the scouting report that I was reading is that he might be one of the most physical players, that's drafted today.
We're pleased to welcome back to the program Craig Button, TSN Director of Scouting. Craig, thanks for working through the technical difficulties and coming back on with us this Friday evening.
Yeah, no problem. I think I was in the middle of an NHL comparable for Chaz Lucius.
That's
And I
right.
was just going to go down the road to from Winnipeg. I'm going to go to Wool Road, Minnesota. Any ideas where I'm headed?
TJ Oshie, Craig.
Nope. Brock Nelson.
Oh,
Brock Nelson. Okay.
swing and a miss,
Brock
Craig.
Nelson. Yeah, no, that's okay. You didn't leave the bat on your shoulder, and that's okay. There are a lot of people that are caught looking. You weren't. See, TJ's from War Road. That's the key here. So,
Yeah.
And you know what? Dave Christian played for the Winnipeg Jets, and Dave Christian was a really, really good player, and that happens to be Brock Nelson's uncle. So when I watch Brock play, and you watch how he gets his body into spots, and when I describe Chaz as being able to score from distance or from in tight, that's Brock Nelson. And Brock, he's got that little bit of quickness where he holds defenders at bay, and so that's the comparable that I use, comparable type for Chaz Lucius. But make no mistake about it, he's a really good, gifted offensive player, and give him time, and the Winnipeg Jets will do exactly that.
Craig, before you just came back on, Ezzy and I were talking about the most off the board selection, at least from the pre-draft consensus so far, I think would be Tyler Boucher going to Ottawa at 10th overall. So maybe can you what do you know about Tyler? What were your thoughts on when you saw his name as one of the top 10 selections? Because I don't think very many people expected to hear his name this early.
So people don't expect to hear it because, people in the public sphere haven't been talking about it, which is
right.
What you think everybody in the public sphere is right? No, the only board that matters is the individual team's board. So the Ottawa Senators like Tyler Boucher. The Ottawa Senators are sitting there going, that's our guy. I always say, you know what? Understand what you're evaluating, evaluate the skills that you value, and celebrate it, and take the guy you want. Nobody worries about anything else. So off the board. Well, guess what? The Ottawa Senators board, it wasn't off the Ottawa Senators board. So here's what I would tell you about Tyler Boucher. Josh Anderson type player. He's got that power to his game in the open ice. He can really pressure you. He can bear down on you. He can make you uncomfortable. He's not going to be a big time goal scorer, but he's going to create space. He's going to create opportunities. He's going to drive the net. And when you watch him play and you watch Josh Anderson play, you look at elements that aren't in abundance. There's not a lot of those types of players. And when I look at the Ottawa Senators prospect pool, they got a lot of skilled players. They got a lot of, Brady Tkachuk's a good player. But now you start to round out your team with players that fill these different areas of the game and important areas of the game. And so that's where I see Tyler Boucher. Interesting, his dad was a first-round draft pick, and now son Tyler becomes a first-round draft pick.
Craig, I wanted to go back to Chaz Lucius. Obviously, a lot of Jets fans that are tuning in right now, that's all, they want to hear about the Jets 18th overall pick. And I wanted to go back to what you were talking about with the knee injury. Like, obviously, he came back, and for the US U18 team, he excelled after that knee injury. But wanted to ask you, like, how much would the Jets amateur scouting staff, and management, how much would they even factor that in? Or like, obviously, they're aware of it, but just based on the results, is that just something, that they look into, make sure it doesn't have any long-term effects? Or is that something that is, I'm just bringing up and it's negligible?
It's only negligible if you've seen the medical report and you do the deep dive. Trust me.
Right.
Every team is considering any player that's had injury concerns or injury issues. They are doing the deep dive. There's no question about it. And it's not just about just dismissing it out of hand. You have your medical people evaluate the medical reports. You very well can have people go in there. You can have other doctors that are recommended by your medical staff go in and evaluate it to try to give you, a sense of what's happened and try to give you that confidence that, hey, there's nothing wrong here and there's nothing lingering and there's nothing that will impact his development going forward. But these things are not left to just, oh, well, yeah, he'll be okay. Oh, boy, he looks like he's skating okay. look at him walk like he is walking tremendously well. No, the medical people are heavily involved in these types of decisions.
And, just the follow-up question here, right? Like we know that the Jets, currently have great center depth, but when you consider that, Cole Perfetti, is in the system and now Chaz Lucius has been drafted, 18th overall. I mean, just how impressive right now is not only the present center depth for the Jets, but, the future center depth with Perfetti and now Lucius in the fold.
Well, let me just say this. So Perfetti played left wing a lot in his draft year, and Chaz Lucius played. They might both end up on the wing. Blake Wheeler was a center too when he was drafted, and he's a terrific right winger. So, I know what it says beside their names now. I know I've watched them play center, both of those guys. But with Cole, I've seen him play a lot of left wing. And with Chaz, he might find himself on the right wing. That doesn't diminish anything. That doesn't diminish their skills or their attributes or what they bring to the game. Because the game is played in a manner now where if you're a winger and you can play in multiple areas of the rink, it's not up and down the wing, up and down a lane. And just watch Kyle Connor play. Watch Nikolai Ehlers play. They're wingers, but they can play all over the ice. Blake Wheeler was a center that moved to the wing. When things arise, they can move it back into the center ice. I think the luxury is that when they played center, they have a comfort level of filling in at that position if they're not regulars at the NHL level. And that's something that is valuable to any NHL team and any NHL coach.
Well, Craig, as he just asked about Cole Perfetti, and when we last had you on, we talked about Cole Perfetti and the idea of him either playing in the NHL or having to go to the OHL. And I know we're focused on the draft, but how big do you think that is for that? Darren Dreger, your colleague at TSN, reported that they're working on an agreement right now between the NHL and the CHL about having an exemption for players like Cole Perfetti, Quinton Byfield. How significant do you think that's going to be?
Well, I think that for those players, Quinton and for Cole and others that have played in the American Hockey League last season, that going back to the OHL would be a step back. And I'm not trying to diminish junior hockey, but for those players, it would be a step back. Would Saginaw love to get Cole Perfetti back? Yeah, no kidding. Would Sudbury love to get Quinton Byfield back? No, yeah, it goes without saying. But, this type of opportunity, comes about. And for Cole and Quinton specifically and others that, are in a similar boat, Jamie Drysdale comes to mind, right? Like they're going to benefit from going and playing in the American Hockey League after having done that as 18-year-olds. Going back to juniors, a step back. This is something that's about development. And I've said this many, many times. Junior hockey, the CHL always talks about development, and they are. They spend they put forth great efforts to develop. But part of development is also letting go. Part of development is saying, what's best for you is moving on. And while I get that we're CHL franchises, having a Cole Perfetti, having a Quinton Byfield, having a Jamie Drysdale is great for business. When you are in the business of development, you have to let players go and develop. So I think this type of exemption is really important for the players. I think it builds on what the OHL, the Western Hockey League, the Quebec League are all trying to do with development. And as hard as it is to see players go to a league when you could potentially have them back, it's the right thing for these players.
Craig Button, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, a special broadcast focusing on the first round of the 2021 NHL Draft. Craig, you talked about the possibility that a guy like Cole Perfetti or the new Winnipeg Jets draft pick, Chaz Lucius, might move to the wing. From an internal organization standpoint, how does an organization go about making that decision when a player who is drafted, quote unquote, drafted as a centerman gets moved to the wing? What are the sort of the fine details that they're looking at in order to make that decision?
Well, all becomes part of the development. And the development part of that is that you're putting players into positions, when you're saying, okay, here's what you need to work on to excel at that position. And the player has to demonstrate to the coach and the coaching staff, hey, you're progressing in the right area. But at the same time, you start to look and you go, hey, wait a second here. Maybe he's not ready to go there. Maybe he needs a little bit more time. Or maybe he's not showing the progress to take on the demands of a center ice position. So now we know that he's got skill. So we'll take a little bit of pressure off and we'll ease the burden on him by playing left wing or right wing. I think it just becomes, I think it's organic. I don't think it's predetermined. You're watching what players do and how they go about it, and then you go from there.
Let me follow up on that one. Here in Winnipeg, Jack Roslovic, who's now, of course, with the Columbus Blue Jackets, everybody thought that he was drafted as a centerman, and he played a lot of time with the Manitoba Moose as a centerman, and then they shifted him to the wing, and they called him up as a winger to play on that really good Winnipeg Jets team that went to the Western Conference Final. His development here in Winnipeg sort of stalled at that point in time. Could it be detrimental to a player that is used to being a centerman, throughout their development, and then they get moved to the wing? How easy is it to jump back into being a centerman after the fact?
I think it depends, if it's a case of just, a transition move where you're trying to allow the player to handle the rigors of the NHL with a little bit less of a burden. And then you say, okay, now you're ready to move back into the middle. And coaches are going to determine that. Everybody's looking for good centers. But and I'll give you an example. Corey Stillman was drafted 6th overall by the Calgary Flames. He was a really good center. He comes to the Calgary Flames and he finds his way to the wing. More because, they wanted to get him into the lineup. He had skill, he had ability. And, they didn't feel comfortable. He might not have felt comfortable playing in the middle of the ice. I come in as general manager. I'm looking at center ice. So I knew Corey had played center. I knew he'd been really good at center. So I said, you know what? I would like to see you over on the wing. I'd like to see, or in the center again. Can you try it? Corey really tried. But what ended up happening was he had fallen into a rhythm of a left winger. And all of a sudden you take a player that's 6-7 years into his NHL career. And while I had seen him play as a center, and I thought he was capable, he wasn't comfortable there any longer. And I get that, and I think it's really important to recognize, that a player, while willing, may not be comfortable at that point of his career. And from a team point of view, you're also looking at a situation where, he may not just be able to possess the attributes that you want in a center iceman.
Craig, wanted to ask you about the pick. I don't know if the 21st pick has been made, but Minnesota selects Jesper Wallstedt. Okay, so Fabian Lysell just went.
The 21st pick has been made, and the 22nd pick has been made. Xavier Bourgault to the Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, so we're at pick, I guess that would be pick 24 now.
23.
Sorry, 23, exactly. Math is not my forte.
Simple math is not our strong
suit. And you probably wouldn't believe, Craig, my dad's a retired math professor at the University of Winnipeg, but not looking too good there. But Jesper Wallstedt, I guess the question I had for you is, obviously Minnesota gave up, the picks to jump up to number 20, but were you at all surprised that Sebastian Cossa went before him? And what is your assessment of Jesper Wallstedt, who's obviously a very talented goaltender?
Not one bit. I said in previous days that it wouldn't surprise me one bit. I said last night on Jay on SC that it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Sebastian Cossa is the first goalie picked. And he was. He's a top-notch goalie. But I think Jesper Wallstedt is a top-notch goalie. Again, if it was as simple as just saying, okay, he's the best, it would be real simple. We all could do the draft. Here's the best player. Here's the next best player. Here's the next best player. Everybody's looking at it through a different lens. I think Jesper Wallstedt's a really strong goaltender. I think he's a number one goaltender. I think that he has all the abilities to carry the load of a number one goaltender, as I feel that about at Cossa. But teams are going to evaluate differently depending on how they assess it and how they look at a particular player and how they project. And it doesn't mean that Jesper Wallstedt is any less of a goaltender than Sebastian Cossa. We're talking about the 15th and the 20th pick. They're both high-end goaltenders. And, going 15 and 20, you knew there was going to be two goaltenders drafted in the first round this year. You knew that. And you knew who the two guys were. doesn't surprise me one bit that Kosa was selected ahead of Wallstat, but Wallstat's a real good goaltender.
Friday night, we're going strong. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, a special broadcast dedicated to the first round of the 2021 NHL Draft. We'll be back again tomorrow morning for round 2 coverage starting at 10 a.m. Our guest this evening, Craig Button, TSN's Director of Scouting, discussing the first round of the draft.
You know, Craig, it's not a specific
And
question.
I'm going to have to cut out in 2 minutes, guys.
Okay,
Just so you know, I got to cut out in 2 minutes.
Okay, perfect. I'll give you a short one because it was more just about the format, the idea of being virtual. How much are you looking forward to the idea of seeing these draft picks actually going up, putting on the jersey? It was nice to see Chaz Lucius with his family, surrounded by family and friends, and getting a Jets hat thrown at him. But how much are you looking forward to next season, being in Montreal and being able to be on the draft floor? And, you know, how much more exciting it is in terms of format than the way, I mean, I know what they have to do it, but then doing it virtually.
Listen, for the players and their families and their friends to be at the draft and realizing that a significant part of your dreams are about to be realized, being drafted by an NHL team and everything that goes into that, the anticipation, the nervousness, and then the unbridled enthusiasm and excitement by the players in that environment and their families and friends. The NHL has a draft unlike everybody else. It's unique, it's special for those reasons. And, you know, the necessity, the pandemic created a necessity for a virtual draft. We understand that. But to get back to the players being able to take in the environment, that the specialness of the NHL draft, I can't wait for it. It's going to be unbelievable, but it's about the young players and their families and friends who have, you know, helped them along the journey to trying to realize their dreams, who have sacrificed and supported all the way along. That to me is what's special. To be able to watch it unfold to me is something that's incredible. It's unique to the NHL, and I can't wait till we get back to it.
Craig Button is TSN's Director of Scouting. Craig, you're a Hall of Famer in our books. You're a gentleman for joining us. What is this, the 4th time you've joined us in the last about 2 weeks or so? Thank you so much for doing this. We greatly appreciate your time and insight.
Absolutely.
And we'll let you go and get on with your evening, and thanks so much.
Well, thank you guys. Like I told you this last week or a few days ago, it's my pleasure to join you guys. You guys are passionate. You're knowledgeable. You take what you do seriously. And for the fans of Winnipeg and the Winnipeg Jets fans, Manitoba Moose fans, you provide incredible content for them to tune into. I'm happy to be asked to be part of it.
We appreciate it, Craig. Have a great
Appreciate
night.
that, Craig. Thank you.
Craig.
There he goes, TSN,
Yeah.
TSN Director of Scouting, Craig Button. He's probably off to go do a Sports Center hit right now. How about that? We always appreciate Craig for giving.
Boys, this has been a legendary evening. That was like if you want to know about a draft pick. I mean, guys, we're not even gonna pretend that we knew. Other than seeing his name in draft rankings, we can't pretend we watched him. We knew a lot about him, other than, like I said, what we've been able to read. And to have that sort of insight from Craig is just so valuable, and it's unbelievable.
It really is. It really is a thrill to be able to have him on. We had Kenny Wiebe join us for a while as well. That was tremendous of Kenny to join us.
I think Ken's still sleeping on my floor right now.
I'll tell you what, guys, we've been at this for 2 hours and 41 minutes without a break. Why don't we take a commercial break? Everybody can stretch their legs. We're not going to be done until the night is done, though. So there's still another 7 or 8 picks tonight. We're hoping to have Chaz Lucius join us. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, more draft analysis, more of the first round coverage. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting. We're going to give away some merchandise too. So if you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash the like button. You'll be eligible to win.
Yeah, get some more likes. Let's go, people. Come on.
Lots more to come. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show special 2021 draft coverage live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We're back. It was a quick break. I hope everybody stretched their legs, got to do what they needed to do.
Got a little agua.
That's good. That's always
needed some water. 2 hours and 40 minutes, Drew, with no break. That might be a new record for us.
That's some good radio right there. That's some good in-depth radio.
Have we ever gone that long, by the way, without a break? Seriously. I honestly don't think
it's not radio anymore, Drew. It's streaming.
You know what I meant. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to remember back to when we announced the Jets were coming back. Did we take commercial breaks when that happened? I don't remember. I don't remember any breaks there.
I don't know, but you know what? Since
too long ago.
It was a long lull. I mean, it was a long part of the show. Time to give away some IC merch.
Okay, let's do it.
We have randomly selected the next winner, the second ever winner of Illegal Curve merch.
And hang on, before you announce it, I want to say that not only do you get an Illegal Curve
T-shirt
merchandise, you get to meet in person and have him come to your home and or office. One, the only, Dave Minuk.
By the way, I was fine doing the first one. I don't know. I remember volunteering to do every single delivery. We'll talk about that off the air.
You should start wearing disguises, Dave, as this kind of goes on. Change it up. Give yourself a mustache, a wig. You can borrow Drew's wig. He'll give it to you.
That's true. Well, actually, I have my Baba's old wig, so I can use that if I need to.
If you want me to do the drop-off, I'll do the drop-off.
Make the announcement because I believe Chaz Lucius is going to join us momentarily.
Okay. So the winner of the Illegal Curve merch number 2, Sandy and G. Thank you very much, Sandy and G.
Awesome.
There you go.
Way to go, Sandy and
Congratulations
G.
to Sandy for joining us. Here he is, the first round selection of the Winnipeg Jets. Chaz Lucius joins us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Chaz, good evening. Congratulations. Welcome to the program. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Awesome. Yeah, couldn't be more happy.
Well, as I mentioned, congratulations on this tremendous accomplishment. I guess walk our audience through the emotions you were feeling as the night went on, and then when you heard your name selected by the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, obviously it was really special. Obviously a little nerve-wracking for sure, but I mean, I think I found a great fit here with Winnipeg, and I'm really excited for the opportunity and for their belief in me.
Chaz, we've read the scouting reports, and we just had TSN Director of Scouting Craig Button on to talk about you. But could you, for everyone watching and will be listening on the podcast, can you just describe your game and what type of player maybe you would compare yourself to?
Yeah, I'd say my game, I guess what sticks out about my game is definitely my shot and my goal scoring ability. I'd say my offensive production for sure. I'd say my leadership, my ability to create time and space for my teammates in my 200-foot game. And I'd say, guys that I try to model my game after, I'd probably say Mark Scheifele would be the biggest one for me.
Good fit right there immediately then there.
That works here in Winnipeg. Chaz, what's it like being, you can tell your phone is obviously blowing up. Yeah. What's it like being with your friends and your family right now on this night?
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. It really is a dream come true, especially to do it with USA Hockey. A big thanks to them, and obviously in my development path and my support, obviously playing for the NTDP. But it means everything to get drafted, and kudos to, all the people that helped me get here.
Well, let's talk about those people, because this is an opportunity for them to shine as well. There's so much that goes into becoming a professional athlete like you did tonight. Obviously your family are at the forefront. Is there a special coach, throughout your career that's been with you that you can really want to pay tribute to tonight as you become a member of the Winnipeg Jets organization?
Yeah, I'd say for coaches, Billy Hangen and Joe Jensen, they coached me all the way up from 10 years old, all the way up until I left for the NTDP. They really showed me, what it means to, I guess, be a pro, work ethic, determination, and I guess be yourself. And I guess at the end of the day, you'll be the best player possible and believe in what you can do, and you'll go very far with it.
Chaz, just, we wanted to ask you, we were talking about it, again, reading the scouting reports, like how extra special is that considering, the knee injury that you overcame this past year and now culminating in, being drafted by the Jets in the first round?
Yeah, definitely. It was about a year ago that I had my surgery. So if you would have told me that this was happening today, it would have been crazy to me. And but every day I worked hard and I kept training, kept preparing, and I'm really pleased with the opportunity that I have here at Winnipeg, and I'm excited when I get going.
Well, Chaz, we don't lack for Minnesotans in Manitoba. There certainly are a lot of Minnesotans on the Winnipeg Jets Manitoba Moose roster. Is anybody in the organization you're familiar with?
No, I haven't met anybody in the organization yet. No.
You're off to the University of Minnesota next year. You're going to be a Golden Gopher. I guess why did you choose the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and what do you hope to sort of work on and have develop in your first year at college hockey?
Yeah, the biggest reason for me, I'd probably say close to home is a big reason for me. The coaching, the players there, everybody pushing, supporting, and I think we're going to have a really good team next year, so I'm excited for the opportunity there as well.
What is your, sort of off the ice? Obviously hockey is a passion, and it's probably bordering on a bit of an obsession, but, what does Chaz Lucius do when he can sort of step away from the game of hockey a little bit?
Yeah, when I'm not playing hockey, I'm trying to hang out with my friends, family. Yeah, do whatever, golf, wake surf, fish, you name it. I'll probably be doing it.
Sounds like a very...
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, we'll have to, reserve the fishing questions for now, because Dave M is for sure the best fisherman out of the three of us. I don't have a lot of success when I'm out there. I usually am just drinking beer. But, Chaz, wanted to just ask you, like, what's the kind of the next few weeks going to be like for you, right? Because we're in the middle of, the summer right now, end of July, but, things are going to pick up. I imagine you're going to, be training and getting ready to, eventually make your way to Winnipeg.
Yeah, so right now I'm at the World Junior Summer Showcase for USA Hockey, so obviously that's the next thing on my mind right now in Michigan. We'll have games next week, so really looking forward to that and being back with a group of guys. And then from that point on, just continue to train, work hard, keep my skills progressing and keep my game progressing, and then I'll be on campus at the University of Minnesota starting August 30th, so I'm really excited.
Chaz, how familiar are you with Winnipeg, Manitoba? Have you been up here before, and what's your knowledge base of the city and the organization?
Yeah, I've been up there before for hockey tournaments all the time when I was younger. So definitely have been there quite a few times.
That's good. You'll be familiar with the city in that case, Chaz. I guess the At this point in your career, you talked about the knee injury. You said last year it was at this time that you were going through the knee surgery. Can you maybe take our audience through the sort of the rehab process and what you had to sort of go through to get that strength back, and sort of what caused the injury in the first place, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was about 2 years ago. What happened was I took a puck to the knee and just the right spot, to where as I continued to grow and mature, my growth plates kind of closed just right on the perfect spot of my knee. And then August 21st is when I had my surgery date. I just had a bone lesion in my knee. So what they do is they just go and scrape it out and then wait for the new bone to grow back. So that's kind of what they did for the surgery. And then the recovery process was really extensive. For the first 6 weeks, I was actually in a wheelchair. Just couldn't move my leg, couldn't walk, and also in a straight leg knee brace. And from that point on, I would do PT every day, go in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I don't know if you're familiar with that or
Yep.
Yeah. 5 hours a day. And that's really what kind of helped the recovery process speed up, of just kind of growing the bone back. And from that point on, I would skate for the first time in December and then play my first game of the season, second week of February.
I know very well that I'm anytime I've had any injuries, I'm not an athlete, so they've never offered to put me into a hyperbaric chamber or anything along those lines. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Chaz, I'm sure you've got to go pretty soon. I'm sure that you have more than a few things to do right now, including a lot of celebrating. But you were just picked about 20 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago. What was that like leading up to that selection? Because obviously you most likely knew you were going to go in the first round, and you weren't sure where. But what were those kind of moments and minutes like leading up to the Jets? Saying your name and selecting you, making you a Jet.
Yeah, obviously I was really nervous before they called my name, but they sent me a text right before the pick, so there was a little more relief for the pick and happiness instead of nervous energy. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I mean, definitely nervous time for sure, but I landed with the right team, the right organization, and I'm thrilled to be a Winnipeg Jet.
Awesome.
Did you have an inkling that it was going to be the Jets, Chaz? Had they interviewed or they spoken to you in any of the sort of the pre-draft process?
Yeah, I definitely knew that they liked me for sure, but obviously it's the other teams passing on you too as well, and that kind of happening. But I mean, like I said, I think this is the best fit for me for an NHL team, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the organization.
Well, thanks for joining us, Chaz, and congratulations on your selection in the first round by the Winnipeg Jets.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
There he goes,
so much,
Chaz Lucius, taken by the Winnipeg Jets in the first round of the 2021 NHL Draft. Congratulations again, Chaz, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. We'll let you get on with your evening. There he goes, Chaz Lucius, joining us on the program. So great to
well-spoken kid.
I mean, good for him, and what a nice kid. And like Craig Button mentioned that the last couple of drafts have been virtual, obviously, and we're expecting the 2022 draft to be in Montreal in person, but just awesome. You could just, the electricity and the excitement coming from him. So, great. Just awesome. I mean, this never gets old. We've been covering drafts since 2011 when Mark Scheifele was taken in St. Paul. So great that we could get him on. Seems like just an awesome kid.
Of course.
You know what though? Sorry, just one sec, Drew. I was going to say, it is, Ezzy, you're 100% right. And that's what I said at the beginning of the night, how much fun this night is, because there's that excitement and you kind of ride it a little bit. You can just sense the energy from the kids when they get selected and how excited they are for this next step in their journey, and knowing obviously there's a ways to go, but each one of these guys, they've got clean slates with this new organization, with a new fan base, with a new city, and it's palpable. And I think people in the audience probably picked up on it. And you can see it. He just seems like a great kid, real earnest, and really excited at this opportunity. So I'm 100% with you. Like I said, it's why I wrote about it in the papers this morning. It's my favorite time of year because it's just there's that excitement. It feels different. And
it's again, like high school. It's like high school graduation, right? Which for Drew was about 40 years ago.
Thank you. I was waiting for that joke. I was going to say Corson Kuhlmans, who we talked about earlier on the show and thought potentially might be a Winnipeg Jets target, just went number 25 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. So he's off the board. Carson Lambeau still available. So that's something worth keeping an eye on.
Wouldn't be surprised if he goes very soon, like 26th or 27th overall.
Yeah, Minnesota, Carolina, Colorado, New Jersey. I think who else is still going to be on the clock? The Chicago Blackhawks are going to be on the clock, if I'm not mistaken. So there's still a few teams left before we wrap up day one, round one coverage here of the 2021 NHL Draft. But that was a very great interview with Chaz Lucius, and we look forward to some more of the draft picks joining us tomorrow throughout our day two coverage. We're also going to be joined early on in the broadcast tomorrow by Mark Morrison, the new head coach of the Manitoba Moose. He was obviously a former assistant coach of the Moose. He's now back in Winnipeg to head up the Manitoba Moose. He's going to join us, I believe, at 10:20 a.m. tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So you can stay tuned to day two coverage of the
12 hours from now
show. I know it's 12 hours from now. It's okay. We're going on, this, like Dave said, it's our fun time, but it's a busy time.
We do it for the people. We absolutely do it for the people, and we love it. We love every minute of it. We love talking about, these types of, these types of events and these types of players. And, Craig Button was telling us that he could see, Chaz Lucius as a right winger at the NHL level, even though, he's a natural centerman. He's played wing. So, this is the type of stuff that we love bringing to you guys.
Carson Lambos, Ezra, you just mentioned him. He just went number 26 overall. He goes to Minnesota. So the Minnesota kid comes to Winnipeg. The Winnipeg kid goes down to Minnesota in a
the Wild have a good player there. Lambos has wheels. I've seen him play a couple times with the Winnipeg Ice. This was back in 2019, so he would have been a 16-year-old. But this is a guy that was invited to the national junior team camp. Like he's got great skating ability, great offensive instincts. He's obviously not going to step right into the NHL. He's going to play for the Ice next year, but Minnesota's got a good one there.
That Ice team's going to be good next year also. I mean,
yes,
it should be good.
Connor Geeky,
yeah. All things being equal, that should be a good
Savoy.
Yeah. So here we are. We are now at pick number 27, the Carolina Hurricanes on the clock, and well, this should be over within the next 30 minutes or so. So
I have a question for you. Is tomorrow's draft going to be 45 hours?
No, the picks go fast and furious. I mean, that's what happens.
That's what they told us last year.
Well, except last year.
By the way, are you aware that we're at the 9th Fast and the Furious movie? F9?
I didn't know that. Really?
And before the draft started, it was actually the 5th.
Yeah.
But what happens always when it comes to the day two is that, first of all, if the Jets, once the Jets are off the clock after round 5, unless they trade back in in the 6th or the 7th round, they don't have anybody after the 5th round.
You're right. Yeah, they've got 3 more picks.
And that's where a trade like a Sami Niku for a late round pick could factor in, right? Like Weber was talking about that. That's always an option.
If you're going to trade Sami Niku, why are you trading him for a 6th or a 7th? You're better off just holding on to him and seeing if something was to happen. You're better off.
No, I'm not suggesting that that's something that's in the works. I'm just saying a trade like that is always a possibility.
As an aside, sorry, let me
interject.
I'm not saying
it's you know what I'm saying, Drew.
I know what you're saying.
Let me interject because in 2 hours, Rob Mahoney's saying that if Kenny is having 3 birthdays during draft, that's good, that's fun. But in 2 hours, the guy at the bottom of the screen is going to be having his actual birthday, and he's so kind as he's going to spend his real birthday, July 24th, with all of you for a number of hours tomorrow.
I think you should get Rob Mahoney a T-shirt.
Rob Mahoney could win a shirt, but he's going to have to contribute on Saturday to the chat. We'll see. Right
Rob,
now,
I'll give you one of my shirts.
Nobody wants a shirt you've worn. I can assure you people of that. Let me ask you, Big Daddy.
I would get the shirt off my back. I'll obviously watch it.
What time were you born, Big Daddy? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question. I was out with my dad last night for some pre-birthday drinks, and my sister as well.
He actually asked you when your birthday was.
Exactly. No, I feel like I was a morning baby. I was born at St. Boniface Hospital. I know that, obviously. I guess I'll text my dad and ask him what time I was born. I do remember what time both of my kids were born.
That's good. They are your children.
7:02 in the morning for Ariella, who recently turned 3. And then Ruben was in the afternoon. I lied. I forget what time it was, but Ruben was in the afternoon. Late afternoon. I want to say it was like 5 o'clock.
At least you got your name right. At least you got his name right.
7:02, I'll never forget, because Ariella came out nice and quick.
I'll tell you what the difference between your first kid and your second kid. My first kid, it happened. My daughter was born on a Saturday morning. I missed the show.
Both of my kids were born on Saturdays. You know
yes,
that. I see Saturday, Drew. Come on.
It's true. And then I texted you, and I think Rich and Dave, and you guys announced the birth of my child on air, which is something they're always going to be able to remember. And then
hold on a second. Hold on. Wasn't it Matt Leibel? I thought it was the Big Show that announced the birth of Aaron.
No, it was my son. It was my son. I think what happened
was the Big Show. Okay.
What I actually did is I went and did an interview on the Big Show about 2.5 hours after my son was born, because that's the second kid. The second kid, you're all used to everything. You don't have to worry about any of that. You can just go off and get a coffee and do a radio interview a couple hours after your kid's born. So no worries at that point in time. But in any event, it will be Ezzy's birthday tomorrow. So party hats and party favors and noise makers and everything along those lines for Mr. Ginsburg tomorrow morning.
You know what we're doing? We were gonna go out for dinner tomorrow. I was telling Dave this right before we hopped on. Naomi and I were gonna go out for dinner, but I said, you know what I really want to do on my birthday? Something that we haven't done for at least 2 years. We're gonna go check out a movie.
Look at
Space
you.
Jam. Yeah.
Very good.
New Space Jam movie. Yeah, we're going to check it out tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to having some popcorn with lots of butter and maybe sprinkling a few Junior Mints on there. So that's going to be my 39th birthday. Love it.
That sounds a little depressing to me, but that's what happens when you have a 39th birthday.
I mean, we're going to go check out a movie and we're going to have a good time. And nobody's gone to a movie in at least a year and a half.
I actually have to say, I was talking about that the other day, and I know we are 14 hours into this draft show.
You can excuse us if we go a little squirrely at this point in time.
And there's still some hockey to talk about, but I will say,
my left leg is numb right now, by the way.
I have not seen a movie in 4 or 5 years. I don't think I used to go around Christmas time, see one. I can't even remember last time. I have no desire. There's nothing.
Why?
There's no good movies. They don't make good movies anymore.
Okay. You're passionate about this one.
I'm not a movie buff. More of a biff, but the point is, I'm not a big fan.
Let's be honest. How many times, anytime you want to watch a movie, you think, is this going to compare? What's the movie you and Ezzy always watch?
Oh, come on. Well, there's a few.
Boy. Yeah, there you go. Thank
you.
Not
Grandma's Boy. What are you talking about? No, that's my
not
boy.
Grandma's Boy. That's my boy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, no, Grandma's Boy was also.
Grandma's Boy is a good one, but that was, but not as good as That's My Boy.
By the way,
That's My Boy is like here. Then White Chicks would be there.
Yeah. By the way, guys, Ofefi in the chat is my wife, Naomi, in case you were wondering.
Oh.
So thank you, Naomi, for saying I'm ageless.
Ah.
Oh, well, she also said Dave looks bored. So, I mean, she's right on both counts, I think. In any event, it's quite the party as we sit here.
I'm just making sure we're updating a little site called illegalcurve.com.
That's right. Dave's multitasking. Ezzy and I are trying to keep this going as we got about 5 picks to go, and the TV broadcast has at least gone to a commercial break.
Just a reminder, though, for people in the chat. So the draft is going to go another 5. Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to be speaking.
Yes.
He'll be doing his after the conclusion of the draft. So we'll have that. We were not going to have that on this show, I don't believe.
We're not.
Unless the boys want to stay up.
I'll be sleeping on your couch when Chevy's talking.
But what we're going to do is, where's my car? That's a good one from Mark Sports Video. But we'll have that up on illegalcurve.com, Chevy's comments.
There you go. So if you want to hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff after round 1 about how they know they did not expect Chaz Lucius to drop to them there, and
that'll be the best. That'll be the best.
They considered all options, and they maybe considered a trade, but there wasn't anything that really appealed to them, especially with Lucius being available. You can hear that later tonight on illegalcurve.com.
Yeah, and obviously, you're being tongue in cheek, Drew.
Of course I am. It's not a shot at Chevy. It's all general managers.
Every GM says the exact same thing, except I don't think that Pierre Dorian is going to be able to say that about Tyler Boucher, but no, all due respect to Tyler Boucher, but there is a little bit of a similarity to Kyle Connor, right? Back in 2015 in Florida, Dave, with Chaz Lucius. Like we've been talking about future considerations, the good folks there that put out their draft guide and we purchased it. Actually, Drew purchased it and it was nice enough to let us use it. But he was he was ranked 14, right? So if you think about it, 18 or I guess really 17, that could be considered a steal, even though Craig Button told us not to ever use steal, Dave. But look, they have a good player, and every team that drafts their player thinks they have a good player. How could they possibly think otherwise? I mean, this is what the amateur scouting staff does, but it's going to be absolutely exciting to follow Chaz Lucius with the University of Minnesota and see how quickly he gets into a Jets uniform.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, these are, the draft is usually a feel-good story for the most part. I mean, by and large, it's a feel-good story because it's always nice to see these kids, and they are kids. They're 17, they're 18 years old. Maybe they're 19 years old on occasion.
Are we getting older, Drew, or are they getting younger? I think we're getting older.
If we're getting older. Yeah, the draft picks have always been 17, 18, 19 years old. We've just gone and started to get older. That's the reality of the situation, unfortunately. But what I was saying is that these are feel-good stories. And sure, you can say, well, maybe I prefer that player, or I prefer that player. But I mean, these are all projections. These are all, these are all, educated guesses by people who do this for a living. So they certainly have a fair bit of knowledge. But regardless of sort of what you think about a player, you never want to criticize the player that's taken. So sure, Ottawa went way off the board, and nobody really expected Tyler Boucher to be selected 10th overall. That shouldn't diminish the accomplishment for Tyler Boucher. He Absolutely. Has no, obviously a team, the Ottawa Senators in this instance, think highly enough of him that they want to grab him nice and early. So, congratulations, Tyler Boucher, no matter what else happens in your life.
Absolutely,
and in your career,
Drew. Yeah.
It can always say that you're a top 10 pick in the NHL draft.
And we talked about it earlier, right? When we had Weber and Craig on at the same time, right? Like, Remo and I were there in 2011, and a lot of people, it was that Sean Couturier debate, right? And we're not going to get into that now because it's pointless. But when you talk about Mark Scheifele at 7th overall, when some scouts might have had him going mid first round or late first round, look at where he's at now. That's what matters. It's where the player ends up 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Or look at a Logan Stanley, who was a first round pick, and there were some Jets fans that weren't sure that he was going to make an impact at the NHL level. Well, if you watch Game 4 against the Montreal Canadiens, Logan Stanley made an impact at the NHL level with 2 goals, one of which was an absolute rocket, beating a future Hall of Famer. So turns out Logan Stanley was a pretty good pick.
Looks like the Carolina Hurricanes. If you're wondering why there hasn't been a pick in the last, 30 minutes by the looks of it, Carolina has traded pick number 27 to Nashville for pick number 40 and pick number 51. So Carolina is trading. Carolina is going to get 2 second-round picks for Nashville, moving up 13 spots back into the first round. There's obviously someone there that Nashville particularly liked. So as a result,
is Aatu Ratu a possibility here? Like when we talked to Craig Button about Aatu Ratu, he kind of expected him to be a late first rounder. So we're at pick 27 right now. You wonder, kind of reminds you, Dave, what was that? 2016, 15, Eli Tolvanen was a late first round pick by Nashville. So you wonder if Aatu Ratu is an option here for Nashville.
Yeah,
certainly.
Sorry, go ahead, Drew.
I was just going to say, I hope they pick somebody soon enough, because I think Carson Lambos has been the last pick made, and that was about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is the part where it's kind of like, okay, fine, there was a trade, I get it, but like, you got to know your board. Like Craig was saying, like everybody is saying, at this point, you have your list. And if someone is on that list and they've fallen, then this is your opportunity to seize and get it. And I know that people are going to be, like I said, with Chad Lucius, people are going to be ecstatic that he was available for the Winnipeg Jets with that type of scoring talent, because that's what you want, right? Like, I mean, again, you drawing comparisons to the Kyle Connor pick. I mean, here, what an opportunity for the Jets for a guy who they don't necessarily need to rely on right away. But that is people talk about, you need to draft, right side defenseman. Well, you got Johnny Kovacevic and you got Leon Gavanke. You've got some in the system, but you don't have a ton of forward depth. Kenny talked about Nathan Smith going back to Mankato. You've got Cole Perfetti now, who could play in the AHL, but there's not a huge, again, Gustafsson and Vesalainen, they're kind of out of that prospect window, and really they're guys that should be seen in a different sort of way. So from the Jets perspective, you really need to start to reach a guy I actually really like, and I watched him very closely this year, Henry Nikkanen. But the only issue is he re-signed for 2 more years in Finland. Now, it's not to say that he couldn't come over and have an out clause in his contract to play here in North America. But the point is, he's a guy who he's a guy who fell, if you remember, in 2019, he was originally thought to be a first rounder, fell to the 4th because he had injury issues in his draft year. I thought he was great in Finland. Again, I didn't watch his game so much, but I watched a lot of what he was able to accomplish and kept track of it, obviously, for the website. So Henri Nikkanen is another young forward prospect who could potentially fill that. But again, from the Jets' perspective, such an important need for a guy, if he can play center, if he can play on the wing, from an organizational perspective.
The Predators traded up to get Zachary Leroux out of the QMJHL. So he's a left winger, 5'11", just under 200 pounds.
Halifax Mooseheads, right?
Halifax Mooseheads out of the QMJHL.
When we had Willie Palov, if you guys remember, on that was, I don't know, almost a year ago, and right after that,
a year ago,
the Halifax Mooseheads season was paused for a little bit there because of COVID. But he's a guy that I know has a little bit of an edge, a little bit of nastiness to his game. But you could say he's another guy that some scouts had as a top 15, top 20 pick. So obviously they were willing to give up a couple draft picks there and draft him. But I remember Willie Palov was saying he's a really talented player who, again, like a lot of these guys, has a really bright future.
Yeah, exactly right. So he's going to go to the Nashville Predators organization as he is in future considerations. They have him down at 45, but I mean, a bit of a grain of salt with all the rankings this year, given how wild and really unusual this entire season has been, right throughout minor hockey. Leroux, big power forward that plays with an edge. His strength is a big positive in his gameplay. He'll need to improve his engagement in his own end and work on discipline. Well, you can work on discipline. Those are things that you can, it's not like working on skating, which you can obviously work on
multiple times. I know that. I don't know if it was 2 times or 3 times, but some people were kind of describing him as like a Brad Marchand, Brendan Gallagher type.
Well, that's certainly a high praise if you when you consider it that way. So we are now on to pick number 28, where the Colorado Avalanche and their avalanche of riches when it comes to young talent is on the clock. 4 picks to go, or 5 picks to go technically.
Maybe not an avalanche of captains, though.
Well, they're certainly having some trouble with Gabriel Landeskog and trying to figure out how that's going to play and where he's going to end up, because it certainly sounds like he may not be in Colorado starting next season, and that would be
crazy.
Well, it's we've never seen Landeskog wearing any other jersey beside a Colorado Avalanche jersey, so that would certainly be something that we'll keep a close eye on. In a 1 week, or not 1 week, 1 week from the expansion draft this past Wednesday. So about 5 days from today, which allows me to plug this coming Wednesday, 8:00 at night, our Illegal Curve free agency recap show. So we're going to go back at it on Wednesday to talk about everything that happened during day 1 of free agency and talk about all the moves. Hopefully the Jets have made some sort of move at that point so that we can talk about. Otherwise, much like the expansion draft broadcast, it might be slightly anticlimactic. But again, join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. and then join us Wednesday at 8 p.m. And to answer Tracy's question in the chat, yes, hopefully the first round will be done by then.
Drew, speaking of our last 2 shows of the summer before we take a little bit of an August break, we're going to have return of the Mac, Mark Morrison, returning to the Manitoba Moose tomorrow on Saturday. And then on Wednesday, I was speaking to him on the phone last week, returning to Manitoba because he's been in California. We're going to have Murat Atesh on Wednesday's show. So looking forward to that.
There you go. Some things you can look forward to. And also our buddy Scott Billick is going to join us on
Scotty's going to join us tomorrow's
show. Yeah, hopefully he's been shotgunning some mustard packets too, so that he can be ready for the excitement of rounds 2 through 7 of the NHL draft. Well, we can thank the Colorado Avalanche. They made a quick pick. Their pick is in, as they are set to announce who they're taking at number 28 overall between Joe Sakic appearing on the screen right now. From the Jets' perspective, it's going to be interesting. I mean, there's always the possibility they could trade back into the first round in the next few picks. If there's somebody they like, I'd be surprised. That would not be typically their MO, especially given that they only have 4 picks in this year's draft at this point in time. But it'll be interesting to see what their strategy and their approach is for tomorrow's day 2 of the draft. The Avalanche taking Oscar Olsson at number 28 overall, a right winger out of Sweden. Yeah, I was looking. I don't think there's any relation to Freddie.
No,
but I definitely looked earlier. In fact, it'd probably be Freddie's grandson if it wouldn't be Freddie's kid at this point in time. It'd be too soon, Drew. I'm not kidding. How old would Freddie be now?
We talked. Didn't we?
Good question.
We did an interview with Freddie, didn't we?
We did back when the Jets came back in 2010, 2011, something like that.
I feel like I was on.
He was a really good defenseman. I think people forget. I mean, obviously, when Phil Housley came over in the trade. For Buffalo, he had that great season when Teemu Selanne had
54 years old.
Freddie Olsson was a really good defenseman. Like he could really skate and had, like you said, Dave, he had the good slapper from the point.
Yeah, he wasn't the most accurate shot from the point, if I recall correctly, but he certainly was a stalwart. Shot. He was a stalwart on that Jets blue line along with Teppo. Those are the 2 guys. And I mean, the less said about Boughton and Ulanov and those guys, the better, I would suggest. But, Freddie Olsson.
Don't forget about Boris Mironov, Drew.
Boris Mironov. I mean, Mironov.
Igor Ulanov. I have an autograph of Ulanov. Number 5.
Igor Ulanov was the first of the Russians to kind of come over, wasn't he? Or no, Sergei Harin. Or was it Ulanov?
You're going back to like the late 80s now, Dave.
Was it Harin or is it Ulanov who was the first kind of the Russian players?
One year the Jets took, I think, 7 Russian players.
Well, so you speak about that, and we played this on the show. Probably
the Mike Smith interview. That was amazing. It was so good.
It was a very random thing to find. I found it on ESPN on I think it was on ESPN's 538 site. The website, I don't know if they still have the 538 site or not. They had it dedicated to sort of analytics. And Mike Smith, was always looking. I mean, he was, I guess, ahead of his time. I mean, he was obsessed with the Russian players, but he was ahead of his time in that he always looked for sort of undervalued and players that might otherwise be overlooked because they weren't necessarily considered what was, quote unquote, the right style of the time. It's a really interesting. I'm sure I have the link to it in my old emails. I'll look for it one day.
Think about some of those picks though, right? Like Alex Zamnov. You guys remember Igor Korolev? Korolev was
Davidov, Evgeny Davidov.
Evgeny Davidov was.
For the record, it was Sergei Harin was just draft pick in 1989, the 12th round. Could you imagine doing 12 rounds, boys? 240th overall. And Igor Ulanov was the 10th round, 203 overall in 1991. So Sergei Harin would have been in the first one.
Wasn't there a player on the Jets also, Jan Kaminsky? You guys remember him?
Yeah, that
sounds familiar.
Have we gotten to the point in the show now where we're just randomly naming Jets 1.0?
Yeah, guys, I think we need to get back to the actual 2021 draft here.
Yeah, well, the Devils are on the
get
clock.
us back on track. You're the host. If you don't start up, we're going to bring Weber back here, Drew. Come on.
That's the beauty. You don't have to do much to get Ken going, so that works. That makes my job a lot easy.
You don't have to do much to get Ken going or to bring him back.
That's true. Exactly. We send him a text. He'll be back. All of a sudden, he appears. He just magically appears at this point in time. In any event, the Devils are on the clock. They have a minute and a half left in their time before they have to make their selection here at number 29 overall. Say that again?
No, I was saying I hope they take a defenseman because they definitely need defensemen. It was a joke because they took Luke Hughes, right, with the 4th overall pick.
That's true. They have a lot of holes, though. They have no shortage of needs, that New Jersey Devils team right now. But yes, they did take Luke Hughes at 4th overall, which seems like it happened about 3 hours ago. It's probably because it did happen about 3 hours ago.
It literally took 3 hours, Drew, to get to this point. Yes,
it's not a short night with the first round of the NHL draft. That's for sure. And
let me tell you, it also is a lot easier when we are there. To make the time, like it just seems like a different. Although I have to say this,
you know what also makes things a lot easier? Commercial breaks. Commercial breaks usually may help things out.
For anybody who's curious, the Chaz Lucius interview that he did with the media, I'm downloading right now, so I'll have that up on YouTube. Not to compete with us right now, but you can watch that later.
There you go. So that's the scrum that he did after getting drafted, and then he was obviously on with us, so you can watch both of those. You can catch our interview just as soon as this broadcast is over. It'll be available on our YouTube page, and of course available for download on your podcasts. And tell all your friends that if you want to hear from the Winnipeg Jets first round selection this year, Chaz Lucius, you can do so by checking out illegalcurve.com and the Illegal Curve YouTube page.
Shout out to David Carpenter, who just brought up Chris Draper for $1. Goes on and he wins. What did he get? He had 3 Stanley Cups, right?
Yeah. Another Stillman gets drafted. Chase Stillman gets drafted by the New Jersey Devils. A centerman. He gets taken.
Riley's brother.
29th overall is where he goes. So another name with a pretty good hockey pedigree. That was the reason I never made it as a professional athlete. My dad wasn't a professional athlete.
But I don't understand. He owned a comedy club, so shouldn't you have also been a funny guy?
No.
Don't blame Sheldon Drew for the fact that you didn't get to the NHL. He gave you every opportunity to pursue your goal of making it to the NHL. So don't blame
it was my overwhelming lack of talent that I think really hindered my development, and also there wasn't much of for 5'7" ankle skaters. There wasn't a huge market for players like me.
Well, Drew, you're doing a wonderful job as a host.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously the Jets, going back to the Winnipeg Jets, they made their selection and that's good, but they still, between now and Wednesday, they still have holes they have to fill on this roster. And that hole goes back to what we talked about really to start the broadcast tonight. It was the right side of the defense. That is, to me, you've managed to hold on to DeMello. You've managed to hold on to Logan Stanley. You would assume Ville Heinola is going to be on this team on the Jets roster next season.
We think so, yeah.
You probably still have Nate Beaulieu, but Nate Beaulieu should be your 7th, 8th guy. He shouldn't be in your everyday lineup at this point in time. So the Jets still have that glaring need for a right side defenseman. If David Savard is that guy at the right term and the right price, it makes a lot of sense for what the Winnipeg Jets would need. I mean, now will they be able to pull it off? You heard that David Savard is one of the few guys who's sort of eager to come to Canada. You heard that because, we mentioned Nate Schmidt when Kenny was on with us earlier. Nate Schmidt is looking to get out of Canada. He doesn't want to get traded from the Vancouver Canucks to a Canadian team. He wants to move to a American-based, back over the border. So, the Winnipeg Jets, if you can get a guy who's fine coming to Canada and fine coming to Winnipeg, David Savard would probably fill a lot of holes for the Winnipeg Jets at this stage in his career and at the stage of the Jets' development when it comes to their back end.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, as Weber mentioned, it looks like Montreal, is in on David Savard or they're close to acquiring him, right? So, Savard might not end up a Winnipeg Jet, but, he might end up a Jet. And I think, all of us would, be pretty happy with that, right? So, I mean, he's a really good defenseman, physical, has an underrated offensive element to his game, but he's a bona fide top 4 defenseman, right? So we'll see what happens. And it almost kind of, feels to me like there might be a player that, we haven't mentioned, that Chevy is looking at acquiring, right? And Kenny threw out a few names, Jake McCabe, Chris Tanev, a few others, but obviously, Tanev has worked out so well in Calgary. I mean, speaking of Nate Schmidt, right? That was the thing in Vancouver. Quinn Hughes and Chris Tanev were just so good together. And they just didn't find that type of chemistry for Quinn Hughes last year. Not to say that, Nate Schmidt, I think Schmidt's a good defenseman as well. But as you mentioned, it looks like, he might be on the move, even though we didn't see that necessarily coming a year ago. So we'll wait and see what happens. But, there's absolutely, I think, some moves to come here. And, I'm just putting it out there. I mean, I think, there always is the chance that the move is coming that we don't see coming, and I think that started in 2018 with the Jets acquiring Paul Stastny, but there's no doubt, Drew, that I mean, that's what everybody in Winnipeg and everybody is looking at the Jets, and they're thinking, who's it going to be? It's only a matter of time, I think, before we find out, is it going to be via trade or through free agency? And I think your guess is as good as mine in terms of who that defenseman is going to be. But absolutely, Savard it's a perfect fit.
It makes a lot of sense, and that's really what it boils down to. It makes a lot of sense. Now, does that necessarily mean it's going to happen? Well, no, obviously not, because a lot of things that make sense don't necessarily happen. But the Winnipeg Jets need to, they need to make that splash.
Yep.
And if David Savard counts as a splash, well, then that's what they need to do, because they need to shore up that right side, and they need to shore up that defense. And frankly, they need to also look at some depth forwards as well. I mean, I know that there's probably going to be a bit of a youth movement up front, but they can't be a complete youth movement, because you still need some, veteran presence back there, not to stifle young players. You still need to find, they shouldn't block Christian Vesalainen, they shouldn't block David Gustafsson, but you need to, probably supplement them with some, you put some young guys around some veteran guys, then that probably works a lot better. And maybe that leaves Paul Maurice a little bit more confident in playing the young guys than he's shown to be so far in his coaching career. Pick number 30 just went. Zach Dean from Grand Prairie, Alberta, played in Gatineau of the QMJHL last year. He goes to the Vegas Golden Knights at number 30.
Curious to know why Zach Dean ended up in the QMJHL, though, if he's from Alberta.
It's true. I mean, I wonder if I have any information on that front. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Drew. It's just when you said, Grand Prairie, Alberta, and then QMJHL, that usually doesn't work out that way.
That doesn't add up, right?
Yeah. Good question. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but he played the last 2 years in Gatineau, according to the information I have available to me. But I don't know.
Maybe I guess his family moved to Quebec at one point.
That would be my best guess. Without knowing his entire genealogy, that would be my best guess, is that his family moved from Alberta back to Quebec, and maybe that's where
I'd like you to put together a family tree before tomorrow morning show, Drew, for us.
I can do that
on Zach Dean. Both
as
sides
long
of
as
the family, yeah.
Well, as long as that counts as your birthday present, I'm glad to do it. And as long as you don't actually check it for any accuracy or anything along those lines.
At this point, we're still going to be on for Ez's birthday.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a little bit longer than 3.5 hours. The entire.
Not just my birthday, guys. It's also J-Lo's. Come on.
That's true. Is J-Lo joining us on the show tomorrow?
I wish.
Yeah, that would be more entertaining, I think, than celebrating your birthday. I'll tell you what.
We're more likely to get Rory McGoran on, who's also celebrating his birthday tomorrow.
Our former producer Rory McGoran, now the play-by-play voice of the Humboldt Broncos.
Yeah,
I didn't realize you guys have our birthday twins.
You don't remember that?
I don't remember anything, Ezzy. I have 2 young kids.
You're senile, Drew. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. At this, remember things. You're barely, I barely remember that when my birthday is. In any event, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you the final 2 picks of the draft. We'll wrap it up. We'll get ready for tomorrow's round 2 as well. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're still going live. 3 hours and 30 minutes into the broadcast, live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
And we're back at the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. 2021 first round of the NHL Draft crawls along here. Somehow there's more TV commercials, and I guess time just stops when there's a TV commercial. I guess that's what happens when it comes to the
Drew,
NHL.
are you just going to fall asleep like in the next 5 minutes? Is that what's going to happen here?
I'm not going to fall asleep, but I'm just,
What pick are they on right now?
What's that?
What's the pick right now?
I think we're at pick 31, if I'm not mistaken. The Montreal Canadiens are on the clock, and their pick should be in by now, and their pick is in. So we have Montreal, and then Chicago will wrap up what has been certainly a marathon broadcast as a first round of the NHL Draft. They certainly take their time when it comes to doing so. I'm trying to remember, is it quicker in person? I don't think it's any quicker in person. I think it's this long regardless.
Yeah, I'd say they're usually about 3 hours, Dave.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit over 3 hours.
I would say this has gone a little long, but
well, the problem is they really remember the first pick didn't start until 20 after 7.
I know the preamble was unnecessary.
Yeah,
the fact that they didn't have people were saying this. How do you not have a pre-show to this? Like, just go into it. Like what they should do is do a pre-show for everybody for the half an hour, and Bettman can do his little preamble, and then at 7:00 sharp you start. It makes no sense to wait that, because the reality is some people want to watch it and others don't.
The Montreal Canadiens have taken defenseman Logan Mailloux. I'm probably butchering the pronciation of that. Mailloux, pardon me, the played in London, not with the
I have
Knights,
a French immersion diploma, no big deal.
That and your math skills are coming in handy tonight.
And that was Ezzy, by the way, that was an all-timer. 24, and Craig Button, 23.
Dave, it's hard to add one to a previous number. In any event, Logan, whatever, as he just pronounced his last name as Mailloux, is selected by the Montreal Canadiens at number 31, which means that the Chicago Blackhawks are on the clock for pick number 32 to wrap up this first round of the NHL Draft. And, well, likely they're going to trade the pick and then add another 5 minutes back to the clock to really make this go for a little while longer. But that's okay. That's the way we have it. While we're here...
I just want to say big thanks to Craig Button and Kenny Weeb for joining us, and obviously Chad Lucius for joining us as well on a big night for him. Real fun show, guys. I mean, it's different for us because we have traditionally been at the drafts and we've covered the Saturday, and we've gone long. That's not a problem for us. We usually do the full day of draft.
We go as long as it takes.
Hang on. It just occurred to me, the pick that the Habs made. This is the kid who played in Sweden who requested not to be selected. This is the kid who got arrested and charged for sexual impropriety.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
Because remember, you're not allowed to. He said, "Please don't pick me," but the reality is,
well, never mind.
Why did he ask not to be drafted?
Why? Because social media went bananas and was ready to murder him, and so.
If that's what he was guilty of doing, then he doesn't deserve to be drafted.
So what he did when he played over in Sweden this past year, and he was engaged in a consensual sexual act with a woman, or maybe a girl. I really don't know I don't think she was 18,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly. She was and so they were engaged in a consensual.
No, she was
sexual
old.
act.
She was. I think she was older. She was older than
Maybe
he was.
she was 18 and he was 17. Like, I don't remember the exact details about the age. Regardless, he took photos of her performing the sex act and distributed them, which is clearly a crime because she did not consent to that happening. So that was the backstory. He came out this past week, as this became known in the media, and said that he didn't want to be selected. He didn't want to be selected by an NHL team, given what he just given.
Well, something doesn't add up then. I mean, if he asked not to be
Because-
selected,
but it doesn't
why would
matter.
he selected?
Well, what I was going
Because
to
he's
say
still
before-
draft eligible.
because
I
the
mean,
point is that
technically
even
by
if
the
it-
letter of the law.
Yeah, I guess so.
It doesn't really matter what a guy says. And the truth is the London Knights are letting him play next year. So it's not as if he wasn't going to play in the OHL next season. And so Montreal decided to take him, and I'm sure, he's gone through a number of examinations, and I would imagine that they're prepared to take the heat for what this selection means.
I don't know. I don't know the full story here.
I'm just saying, like,
it doesn't seem like this was what he did. Like, I mean, it was wrong what he did. Like, and
yeah,
so,
I mean, sure, but he
I don't know about that.
but he paid a price. But I mean, guys, like, is he never supposed to be able to do anything ever again? Like, I mean, when you pay a debt to society, it doesn't mean you're guilty for the rest of your life. I mean, I'm just saying, like, well, it didn't. It happened over a year ago, and again, like, or within the last year. I'm just saying, like, there's too many people who act as if they've never done anything wrong, and I would suggest that if everybody's phone was open to scrutiny, then we'd all be guilty of something somehow. I'm not excusing bad behavior. If you do something bad, you should deserve to be punished for it. Like I think what the Chicago Blackhawks did is disgusting, and I think the organization needs to be punished for what they've done, or what they haven't done, I should say.
I don't know.
But
I know what you're saying.
I'm just saying, like, it just, to me, you got, like, I just worry that we get into a position where a guy makes a mistake, and don't get me wrong, it's a stupid thing to do. But like I said, I'm not going to sit here I'm not going to put myself on some podium and pretend like I've never done anything stupid that I regret. Now,
I will.
Again,
I will. I've never done anything stupid. I'm perfect.
Okay, well,
I've never done anything. I've never done anything criminal.
I would suggest that I've got evidence to the contrary. I'm for you, actually. So
not talking about criminal acts. I mean, you're being tongue in cheek there. I mean, what he did. Look,
he sexually harassed a girl. That's wrong.
Well, no, he more than sexually harassed her. He committed. He took photos and distributed them. I mean,
that's sexual harassment.
Yes. I mean, I agree with you, but I don't know. This is to renounce, to say that he didn't want to be picked, and for them to pick him.
What's going on here? This is weird. I mean, obviously we have a lot more to talk about, but if he asked not to be picked and then he was picked, something, I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, all I'll say is this: it's probably a good thing it wasn't Chicago who picked him.
Dave,
that would have been something.
No.
Well, I mean, the Montreal Canadiens are gonna. I mean, yeah, you know what? Mark Bergevin and the Montreal Canadiens organization thinks that they're bulletproof relatively, that they can handle. They'll take whatever the backlash is here and deal with it. But
yeah, I mean, again, like
this isn't going to be good. I don't think there's anything good that's going to come out of this.
Well, look, and it may end up like that kid from that Phoenix draft or Arizona draft last year. What's his name? Mitchell.
I have a feeling that might be what's going to happen here, Dave.
Maybe. I have no idea. I'm just saying, like, look, I don't know all the details, and I'm not going to sit here on a. I just get a little bit worried with the groupthink mentality that goes on social media, that everyone is ready to torch people. I mean, the truth is, guys, everybody, like, I saw Cam Robinson who was tweeting about it. He said everybody knew this. So if everybody knew it, and I'm sure everybody was fine with it. And again, like I said, don't hold these people up as if they're role models. The only people who should be role models are your parents. I'm serious. Like, it's like, don't look to organizations as if somehow they're like all lily white and they're perfect. Like, every organization's got some flaw in it. And I'm just saying, like, so this acting as if somehow like, oh, everything's got to be holier than thou. I don't know. I just find it a little bit suspect. But anyways.
We'll talk more about this, I'm sure, throughout
Let's
the
move
day. Tomorrow's broadcast, the Chicago Blackhawks wrapped up the first round by selecting defenseman Nolan Allen. But you definitely know that the talk of day two, certainly the start of day two, is going to be about this Montreal Canadiens selection and the ramifications that are going to be felt, well, frankly, throughout an NHL that is dealing with, well, I mean, what they're dealing with in Chicago is heinous. Is heinous. So you got
Drew's also a hand model. Not only is a role model, but he has great hands.
You got a bit of some controversy for the NHL to deal with. And Mark Bergevin, of course, who was director of player personnel with the Blackhawks in 2010, choosing the player, and then the Blackhawks following it right up. Well, that's going to be interesting.
Well, hey, at least we ended the night on a cliffhanger.
It's a cliffhanger. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. We'll talk more about the Jets selection of Chaz Lucius tomorrow. We'll talk about the Jets second round selection, the third round selection, and we'll talk about more draft picks tomorrow as we get back at this in about 11 hours time. Very interesting night. It sort of got dull there for a while, but it ended very interesting, and you'll see what happens with the rest of this. We want to say thank you to all of you for joining us. Let's move on to something more positive to wrap this up. Thank you to so many of you who've joined us tonight on the broadcast. We do this for you. You made it fun. The chat was certainly lively. We appreciate all the comments, all the feedback, everything about that. So thank you so much for everybody for joining us. We encourage you to join us again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Manitoba Moose head coach Mark Morrison is going to join us. Our buddy Scott Bell is going to join us. We're going to be joined by the Winnipeg Jets draft picks when they are made. Obviously, I don't know who they're going to be, but they're going to join us just like Chaz Lucius joined us tonight. In case you missed any of the broadcast, it'll be available on our podcast. It'll be available on our YouTube channel as well as soon as this show ends. Big thank you to our sponsors. They make this show possible. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, Boston Pizza, and our good friend at Seagram's support these fine businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. Dave Minuk is in the top right. Ezra Ginsburg is in the bottom middle. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Until tomorrow morning, Saturday, 10 a.m., and day 2 coverage of the NHL Draft, we wish you good night and good luck.